Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 243. That's Planet Extra Podcast. I am Chaz the Chadello, a host of Planet America on ABC Australia. Next to me is Lockie the Lucky, who has just come back from America. Lockie, have you come back more bogan than you left? What is with the giant chest and neck tattoo?
I was only allowed in America on the condition that I was MAGA, and I was only allowed out of America on the condition that I am full MAGA. So this is the new Lockie the Lackey. Get used to it.
I don't know why you think that look is MAGA. It's looking a little bit more like 1980s Hoodoo Guru's drummer than MAGA. But look, that's fine. That's fine. My problem is not so much the look. My problem is that 5 minutes ago you did not have a giant neck and chest tattoo. And you're making visual jokes on an audio podcast, Lockie. That is my concern.
Make subverting the form great again.
Lockie has been away for a month and he's come back a zany trickster. That's what you have to look forward to over the next few hours. I am already bored. We're going to be hearing a lot more from Lockie later on about how his trip went. Hopefully it'll be chock full of unnecessary visual japery. But that will be much later, probably later by the second, Lockie, much later on the PEPmas / Pepsgiving / Peppy New Year special. Yay! In actual fact, we're about 3/4 of the way through recording this special, but we've just worked out how it's actually going to go. So we thought we'd share it with you with this beginning, which we're recording 3/4 of the way through. There's going to be 3 parts to this special, folks. 3 parts. In this part, we're going to have PEP favourites Bill Wyman, Elle Hardy and Jared Mondschein. Then there'll be a second part out on Sunday. And that's going to have Bo and Melina. Mm-hmm. And finally, on Tuesday, there will be a third of 3 parts with the king of our very own PEP Avengers crew, John Barron.
Oh, man.
John Barron in the third part.
Strap in. It's a good hour and a half of John.
It really is. We had to strap him in. We actually had to strap him in. Dr. Dave is sadly a little sick, so it's not going to be a happy Pepsgiving for him, but hopefully this special won't make him feel worse. It's okay, it won't, because he won't watch it. He never watches PEP. Remember, you can also find PEP on Facebook at the Chaz from Planet America channel, on YouTube, where you absolutely should subscribe, by the way, so you know when we come back next year. This is the last of the year. We will come back next year if you subscribe. I mean it. Go subscribe now. We're going to wait. No, we're not going to wait, but I'm trusting you. Don't let us down. You can tweet us or Blue Skies at PepChaz Dr. Dave, PEPCHASDRDAVE. If you want to chat to some fellow Peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen now or in the blurb of the podcast. Or you can contact us over the holidays anytime on email at producer@pepthepodcast.com. The address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. But on with the beginning of part 1A of the big 3-part Pepsgiving / Merry PEPmas / special. It's Bill Wyman. We'll see you guys in about 3 hours. Till then, stay peppy. Let's kick it off. Part 1A of the Pepsgiving crossover special is Bill Wyman. Hey, Bill.
How are you, Chaz? It's so good to see you. How are you?
It's great to see you. I'm sorry. We're not doing gratefuls at the moment, but if I was, I would just say I'm grateful for Bill waiting 2 hours for me to be here while I was preparing. No. Thank you for that, Bill.
Oh, and I'm sorry we're not doing gratefuls because I don't know if you know this, Chaz.
You can do one if you want.
Can I do a quick one?
Yeah, do one.
Because I don't know.
You waited 2 hours.
Because I don't know if you know this, but it's Thanksgiving in America.
It's Pepsgiving.
I mean, yeah. Yes. And it hasn't quite hit there. I guess it's just hitting in America right now. But Thanksgiving is one of those weird holidays. Like, I don't know if you watch all the late night news shows, but there's all these jokes about how nobody really wants to go home to the family for Thanksgiving, stuff like this. All that said, as you know, we have a nice Thanksgiving in our house sometimes. And it is one of those holidays that has its ups and downs. But I did want to acknowledge that it's Thanksgiving and we should give thanks for our families and everything that we do have going for us, because obviously in a lot of the world, a lot of people are suffering right now. So I think we always have to remember that.
That's wonderfully said, Bill. Thank you. And since you've shamed me with that beautiful grateful, I am going to do 2 very quick gratefuls now. They'll teach you. First of all, I'm going to thank Dylan for filling in for Lockie for the last month. I probably should have mentioned by now, when we first started the pod, way back when, even pre-Lockie, Dylan gave me some really solid advice, because Dill's a bit of a podcast aficionado, and Dill was the one who encouraged us to do it in the first place, and he made a lot of great suggestions. And so, yeah, you could consider him father of the pod.
Who, me?
Not you,
No.
Dylan.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, yeah, no. I thought you said Bill for a second.
No,
yeah,
Dill,
yeah,
Dill,
right.
Dylan.
No, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you, Bill. You are the spiritual father of the pod, even if you aren't the actual father of the pod. And also, I want to say thank you to Tim, who was responsible for this beautiful construction in between us. I'll just get right up there in the camera. Hopefully that's in focus.
It's really extraordinarily disgusting.
This is a reenactment of the statue that we talked about in Washington, the Trump Epstein statue, which Dave was so taken by. And so Tim went and made him a little copy, which is wonderful, because Dave, turns out, he didn't even make it to Melbourne because he's been really sick, which is the reason he's not here. He's going to record a little message at the end, which will... he'll say bye to you, but he's going to do his best to sound healthy, but he's not. So he'll be okay in the end, but he's having a bad couple of weeks. And this is going to make him, this will be a little ray of sunshine. So thank you very much, Tim. I really appreciate it. We'll leave it here, and then we'll bring it to Dave. First we'll make sure he's not contagious, and then we'll bring it to Dave. But enough with this thanks stuff. Let's get into the gospel. Let's start with the most disgusting, sickening story. No, I don't want to overcook it, but this is something that you've been pretty keen on, and it's not just you. Elle was really keen. Elle was actually really angry that you took this before she did.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
I'm
there's
sure
a lot.
You'll do it justice.
There's a lot to chew here,
Yeah.
and it is really disgusting. But I have to say, as I put on Blue Sky, it is. I sincerely think it could be my most favorite news story in my entire life.
Wow, don't
it's
oversell,
so
Bill.
great, and I don't want to oversell it because I want to make it clear this is a journalism story. And my whole life I've been a media critic. I've written widely on the media for a lot of places, and particularly just in my relative positions, I'm very concerned about journalistic ethics, and I've always tried to operate at the very highest levels. And one of the things that drives me crazy about criticisms of the media is that it literally is so often unnoticed how so much of the so-called mainstream media bends over so backwards to do things right, to be fair, to get things straight and stuff like this. And so much of the attacks we see coming from the right is made up of bad faith, and it's what we call working the refs, which is you just attack the referees, and they get scared of calling you on things.
Okay, Bill, you're warmed up.
Okay, so anyway, let's move
talk
on to
about
this.
Nuzzi.
Now, why is this a great story? Okay, so you guys might have heard in the last year about this D.C. political reporter who was the the Washington correspondent for New York Magazine, who had this affair with RFK Jr., which, again, we're going to go several levels of disgustingness in this little segment here. So that's the first one, okay? Let's take it to the next level, which is that she apparently did not actually have an affair with him, but rather a virtual affair, which apparently involved a lot of video sex via FaceTime.
Oh, imagine listening to that.
Or watching it. Okay, these are things you're not going to be able to get out of your head. Okay, so this caused a scandal about a year ago. And what happened is that someone at New York Magazine apparently heard about this, let her editors know. She denied it. There was all sorts of going back and forth and blah, blah, blah. But she was eventually forced out of New York Magazine.
We should add in as well. She's got a history of this as well.
Oh.
Not of RFK, but she's got a history of
Let's not give the...
Oh, I wasn't going to give away what was in what you're about to talk about.
Yeah.
But I'm saying even before then.
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll leave it. Okay. You tell the story, Bill.
And I'm sorry. And the reason I say I love stories like this is it's just that it's about journalism, and there's all these people who had like these 15 minutes of fame in American life and media over the past 20 or 30 years who keep coming back. The one other thing I want to mention before we get into this is that we're going to talk about Olivia Nuzzi, her involvement with various men. And I'm not going to go into all the ages, but you can basically assume that any one of the men I'm referring to are either 20, 30, or 40 years roughly older than she is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She's got a type. Can I throw in a disclaimer, which is just a transparency, and that is I have been interviewed by Lizza, her ex-fiance, before. And I go along really well with him. I had a fairly lengthy chat with him, not just in the interview, but afterwards. We were chatting around for a while. I really like the guy. That's not going to stop me saying what I have to say. That doesn't really count for much. But I just want to put it out there. I know the guy and I like the guy, but I've got some critiques.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, so let's keep on going.
I actually come to praise Ryan Lizza, and we'll get to that in 1 second.
Okay.
And by the way, just as far as disclosures, just for the record, I write for New York Magazine. I have for a really long time. Occasionally, I'm in the art section. I have nothing to do with the Washington section or intelligence or any of those people. And all my editors at New York Magazine have left a long time ago, so I hardly even know anyone there. So as Chaz just mentioned, she was very, very young. I think she ascended to her position at New York Magazine, which is a very prestigious journalistic place, when she was 24. Okay, so she's very young. And if people don't know, this is not relevant, but people should know she's attractive and she's blonde. She's in a lot of photographs, and she dresses well, let's say. So she's one of these people that the tabloids in New York like to use photos
Very
of.
stylish. Yeah.
And she got involved with this guy, Ryan Lizza. And I should also mention that she came to prominence because she went to New York and she was working on the campaign of Anthony Weiner. Yes. You all remember Anthony Weiner. I'm not going to go into him. But she saw all sorts of crazy things on the campaign, left the campaign, went to the Daily News, says, hey, I can write a really great expose for you about the Anthony Weiner campaign. And that was one of the catalysts of all the insanity in the Anthony Weiner stuff going on in New York.
She was in college at the time, and that's how she started her career.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So since the beginning, she's had this thing where she had a loose association with things that were a little bit louche and sexy, and she was very young, enterprising, and a tiny bit. I might have this temporary allegiance with you, but I'm happy to throw you under the bus to advance my career. Yes. Okay. So then she gets involved with this guy, Ryan Lizza. Ryan Lizza, as Chaz said, is a very serious guy. He worked at the New Yorker for a really long time. He has a long history of Washington politics, and I think he's a smart writer. I've never had any problem with him. However, after 10 years at the New Yorker, he was kicked out a few years ago on a sexual harassment issue. Now, he has denied that. He said he was just dating the person, but that's not what the person's lawyer says, and that's what the New Yorker said. And they kicked him out, which is not a good thing to happen on your career. But he eventually maintained some of his alliances with places like CNN, and then he ascended to Politico, and he was one of the guys who worked on the Politico Playbook, which is a big deal newsletter Politico sends out. Okay, so he's at the very apex of this, and then you have his very attractive and successful younger, what turned out to be fiancé. Okay, I think he's 20 years older than she is, roughly.
Please.
And so they become basically a media power couple in D.C. Okay, so that is the setting for all this. So when it comes out that she was having this ridiculously outlandish affair with this disgusting politician, RFK Jr., it caused a big, huge contretemps. She wasn't entirely honest about it. She got blown out of New York Magazine, and that was a year ago.
19 years difference.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that was a year ago. Now, the reason we're talking about this is that she reemerged about 2 weeks ago, and she wrote a book called American Canto. Canto means song, sort of something like that, or a stanza of a poem. And it turns out she's the West Coast editor of Vanity Fair. And you go, wow, that's kind of a weird thing. Like, what does it mean to be a West Coast editor of Vanity Fair, which, of course, has a lot of coverage of Hollywood anyway in California. So whatever. And then there was an excerpt in it. And I think I can say, as someone who's been in journalism for a very long time, it's probably the worst piece of writing I've ever read in my entire life. So she reemerges with this. And not only that, there's all these photos of her. Like, do you remember Herb Ritz, the guy who did all this black and white kind of beefcake, kind of gay erotica kind of photography? He did a lot of Madonna videos, black and white.
I don't, but I'm sure Lockie's showing us examples right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you, like Chris Isaac walking on the beach in black and white and stuff like that. So all these photographs look like him. She's in the shadows. The wind's blowing her hair. She's driving a car. It's really ridiculous. And then the actual part of the memoir is this thing. So this all happened in November, about a year ago. Then there were the wildfires. I forget when they were. Many months later, right? Yeah. So the whole thing is her happening to live in L.A. during the wildfires. So she's the wildfires are getting bigger, 700 acres, 10,000 acres, the sparks are flying. Like, she puts herself in the middle of this, like, oh, this is all happening to me, and she's just an incidental, silly person who vaporized her career, right? So the whole positioning of herself in this realm is really preposterous as well. And when I say that it is badly written, I have just, as you can see, Chaz, see all this pink right here?
Yeah, I see.
These are all the excerpts I have.
There's a lot of pink.
And I can't read them all,
No,
okay?
you can't. You definitely can't read them all.
I just want to read one, okay?
That's coming from me.
Okay, another thing is that she uses the word gibbous moon several times. Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a waxing moon and a waning moon, and then there's other things, okay? And if I was as an editor, I wouldn't let someone use the word gibbous because it's distracting and it's a weird word. She uses it at least twice in this, okay? So I want to explain this to you so we can – okay, and the other thing is she talks about RFK very, very frankly, and she's very explicit that she's completely in love with him, transfixed with him, and blah, 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 and she was in this ridiculous thing. But she doesn't call him RFK Jr. She calls him the politician. Right. Okay, so here's a sample. The politician left the Midwest for the East Coast. The deal with the president had fallen through. The moon was big and gold, and we marveled at this. Quote, I do pay attention to the moon, unquote, he told me once. We had been born under the same kind of moon, the January waxing gibbous in Capricorn, which is really a piece of writing, the January waxing gibbous in Capricorn. 97% illumination, 39 years apart. Quote, do you think this means we're compatible, unquote, he asked me. I don't know, I said. Maybe. Like all men, but more so, he was a hunter. In a literal sense, he used not a bullet, but a bird. In a literal sense. It was not about a chase, but about a puzzle of logic and skill that amounted to a test of his self-mastery. He was the mouse and the architect of his maze, the giver of his own pleasure and torment. He desired desire. He desired being desired. He desired desire itself. I understood this just as I came to understand the range of his kinks and the complexes and how they fit within what I thought I understood of his soul. The spark, the flame, the rumor fulfilled, the labyrinth on fire, the Palisades fire.
Okay, you've made your point.
Okay?
It's not
and
good
again,
writing.
it doesn't end. It just goes on like that. I mean, just these ridiculous metaphors, these inaccurate words, and just preposterous constructions. Okay, so anyway, this exploded on the scene, about 10 days ago. Yeah. Okay? So this is so delicious, you just can't even, everyone's saying, what is Vanity Fair doing? This is the worst piece of writing. It's completely unedited. The whole positioning of yourself against the fire is so inappropriate. The self-pity, there's all sorts of stuff in this excerpt that is just preposterous. Okay? So anyway, everyone is having so much fun with this. Okay? Yes. And then, dear reader, it got 100 times better. Because when all this came out, Lizza got caught up in it because he is like fiancé to this woman who was reporting and doing all this stuff. And there was some question, how much did he know and all this stuff? And he lost his job at Politico, which sucked. And he and Nuzzi got into a huge breakup fight, and she was accusing him of all this kind of nefarious stuff. And then there were these court things which all the tabloids covered. I'm not even getting into the deliciousness of all that, okay? So anyway, that all happened, but that all disappeared too, okay? So now a year goes by, total silence. Nuzzi comes out with her thing, and then Lizza decided to weigh in, okay? And what's so incredible about this, you guys, is that he's been posting Substack posts on something called Telos, T-E-L-O-S, and the first one was he put up on the web. for free, and then the others you had to subscribe to a Substack to get them. So everyone's making fun of that. But I'm telling you, these are some fine reading. And a lot of people have criticized him. And what's valid is that it's pretty clear that he had access to all his wife's emails and all his wife's texts. So there's definitely a violation here going on because he just has chapter and verse and all this. He's a very serious journalist, and you just get the feel when he makes these assertions, he's like, yeah, let me show you the emails.
And by the way, you haven't gone into the legal stuff, and that's fine. I understand why you haven't. But the tenor of those legal stuff was that he was controlling and that he was invading her privacy, all this kind of stuff. And now we see he
at least half of it's true.
Access to her text messages and emails. So you go, checks out. The other thing I would add is that right at the beginning of the first part, he's justifying for why he's writing this, because he's saying, I wanted to go do dignified silence, but that's not available to me as an option anymore. So I've, in spite of my desires, I've been dragged out to give my side of the story because it's going to be forced out of me anyway because she's talking about it. That's his justification. And you just go, well, if you're just giving your side of the story because you feel you have to, because you're being dragged into the public here, then why have you put it behind a paywall to promote your Substack?
Yeah.
That's not what you do if you want your side of the story to get out. That's what you do when you're trying to monetize your side of the story. So
I think that's a fair point. Yeah. And journalism, let me tell you, journalism is a tough business these days. I personally don't have an issue with that. But, and of course, what happens in the journalistic community is I have friends who sent it to me the minute it came out.
Sure.
So,
and you sent it to me, so thank you. God bless you, Bill.
Okay. And the one other thing I will defend him is that according to him, she called him up just a few weeks ago saying, hey, I just want to make sure we're not going to be talking about this stuff anymore, right? And, and he said this was just as she was readying her memoir. So you can tell all these ways that he is very incensed at this whole thing.
Yeah, he's angry. But although to be fair, if her book is like that, what you just read, it's not saying much about him unless he is the gibbous moon.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And then, and I don't mean to be completely defending him, okay, but I will say that another one of his arguments is that, hey, there's some very serious journalistic malfeasance here.
Yeah.
Which is another, legitimate.
If he's not lying, then about what he said in those first three parts, that definitely is journalistic malfeasance in a massive way on her behalf.
Right.
If he's telling the truth.
Right. Yeah. And he also makes one other remark in here, which I think fuels him. He says, she orchestrated a plot with the help of a senior Trump official to try to have me imprisoned, italicized. So I think he, and knowing the Trump people, I can see that happening.
Okay.
So anyway, what people should know is that the first part of this that was such a bombshell, and the point of it is that, hey, she was actually having another affair. She'd done this before, and let me tell you, the guy's name was Mark Sanford. Yeah. Okay, now, you may or may not remember who Mark Sanford is, but this is just another one of these little bits of deliciousness. So 15 years ago, there was a governor of South Carolina, which is a deep red southern state. Okay, he's a Republican, and he disappeared. Like, there just became this national story. His staff didn't know where he was or anything else. And the South Carolina media was saying, where the heck is Sanford, our governor, our Republican governor? And they said, oh, he's out hiking the Appalachian Trail, okay, which is the Appalachians are a mountain along the East Coast. And there is a famous thing called the Appalachian Trail, which is very beautiful. And so they said, oh, that's really nice. And of course, what happened is he was not only having an affair, but it was with a Brazilian woman, and he was in Brazil, and all this crazy stuff happened. So of course, it blows up his marriage, humiliates his wife, and then I believe he got engaged to the Brazilian woman, and that didn't take, whatever. And in a normal world, a Republican governor being a family values, deep Southern conservative governor would resign in disgrace. And of course he didn't, because they have no shame. So he held on to his governorship, but I think he left it. And then he waited a couple of years and he ran for his old congressional seat, and he actually won, again, because he's shameless. But a couple terms later, he got thrown out he got primaried and he got thrown out. Part of which is that, ironically, actually he became something of a Trump critic. Then, preposterously, he decides he's going to run for president. And he actually ran for president for about 2 months, okay? Yeah. And so it was during this time where he and Olivia Nuzzi, according to Ryan Lizza, based on his conversations with his then fiancée, had at least one assignation. And I can't go into the whole thing, but you really have to read it because the whole way. And one of the funniest things is that they were both in South Carolina. And I guess the day after, Lizza called up Stanford, who's, because he's a heavy duty political reporter, and says, "Hey, we wanted to talk to you about what's happening in the campaign. How about if you and me and my wife, my fiancée Olivia, have lunch tomorrow?" And I guess that made him blow up, but it was just sheer coincidence.
Yeah.
One annoying thing Lizza does throughout the whole thing is he refers to everyone by their first names.
Yes.
So Sanford is Mark, Kennedy is Bobby, which is very irritating.
I was just going to say that also has another bit of great Olivia Nuzzi writing, the Sanford section, where, once again, we're getting this from Ryan and Lizza. He insists he saw this written down, a piece of writing from her, which was, "If I swallowed every drop of water from the tower above your house, I would still thirst for you." And how he busted the affair is that her backpack was allegedly spilling out all this, and she was rehearsing some letter that she was writing. And then, according to him, they had all these couples discussions, say, "I'm sorry, I'm infatuated with him, blah, but I only slept with him once." And by the way, what Lizza wrote after that was, "The lack of a water tower on our Georgetown home's roof ruled me out as the note's intended recipient." That was funny. By the way, the thing I was saying before, I feel like I can say this now. I wasn't even talking about Sanford. I was talking about, even before then, Ryan Lizza met her when she was with Keith Olbermann, who's another elderly man, who basically paid for her rent and wardrobe and jewelry and lifestyle for 4 years coming out of college when she first started. So she does have a bit of a history in this regard.
Yeah,
and Ryan Lizza, inverted commas, saved her or helped her escape that situation where she was being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to, I don't know what she was doing with Keith Olbermann. It seems to be very ambiguous, but certainly Keith Olbermann is a strange guy. I'll just say that.
Right. And that was another thing I was going to get to. And this is another reason why I love the story so much, because every day that went on, some new person was just drawn into it, some preposterous person. And when she was in college, she wrote to Keith Olbermann. And people might not know this, but Keith Olbermann was very famous for a while.
Big guy.
He was a famous sportscaster, which I don't even care about. But then he moved over to MSNBC and became very, very he's kind of like the guy. There was an Aaron Sorkin show called Sports Night that was kind of about him, and there's a little bit of him and Jeff Daniels in the other Aaron Sorkin show, which I hate, The Newsroom or whatever.
Yeah, Newsroom, yeah.
But he was actually very funny and very ferocious. Okay,
he was also Rachel Maddow of the Bush era.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this was a terrible time. I mean, Gonzalez, the attorney general, and all sorts of terrible stuff going on. But he's also very bombastic, full of himself, and quite a character. But he was one of the people who built up MSNBC. So she wrote him out of the blue. He invites her to New York, and they ended up. Keith Olbermann, to his credit, says, "Hey, I went out with this girl for 4 years. Yes, I got her a studio. Yes, I gave her $12,000 worth of jewelry over 4 years, which isn't that much. I was making effing bank at the time. What am I supposed to do? Buy her a card from Kmart?" You know what I mean? He said, "We got a dog together. They were living together. They had a relationship." And so, there is a way. Yes, I'm 40 years older, but, so that was another thing that Lizza brought up.
It just goes on and on the story here. Go.
So anyway, then we get to the second posting of Lizza. Okay, so the first one was a neutron bomb. Okay, the second one was another one. And this one was all about the relationship between RFK Jr. and Olivia. And he has a lot of their texts, and there's so much disgusting stuff in it I can't even go into. Part 2 begins with this, quote, "Your open mouth awaiting my harvest," Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is now the Secretary of Health and Human Services, had written to my then fiancée, quote, "Drink from me, love," unquote. He continued, quote, "I mean to squeeze your cheeks to force open your mouth. I'll hold your nose as you look up to me to encourage you to swallow." And I realize people are trying to keep their lunch in right now. Quote, "Don't spill a drop," unquote. "I am a river. You are my canyon. I mean to flow through you. I mean to subdue and tame you, my love."
I also highlight the same section. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Okay, and it gets worse from there.
They should be writing for Vanity Fair, apparently. That's what they're looking for.
Seriously. And then there's all the details about their relationship and stuff like this. And then the third one today, which just dropped out 4 or 5 hours ago. And one other thing, just to finish off the Star Wars cantina of supporting characters in this story, is that RFK Jr. is actually married. Okay, and he's a notorious womanizer. There's all these terrible scandals in his past. And I should mention one more thing about RFK Jr.
His first wife committed suicide.
Yeah, it's very terrible. And the thing is, when I was growing up, there was a very famous book called The Kennedys by Collier and Horowitz, and it basically detailed the lives of what they called the cousins at the time. So the third generation, Joe Kennedy being the first one, JFK, RFK, Teddy Kennedy the second, then all the cousins, which ranged from Carol and Kennedy to RFK Jr. and about a whole bunch of other people we don't pay attention to because there's like 8. Like I guess there were 6 or 7 surviving Kennedy children who had all these kids, right? Sure. And the stuff about RFK Jr. and his brother, whose name I forget, is the most sobering and sad of the book because they were at Harvard and they were heroin addicts. And there's also this other part that I might not have this right, but there was some acolyte of either JFKs or RFKs who, there are all these people who are very bereft. And he had an older guy who'd sort of attached themselves to these two brothers. And I kind of dimly remember it now, but it's a very disturbing thing where they had these expansive apartments at Harvard and he was basically living with them and doing heroin with them. And it was just a very sad environment all the way around. So you can't really feel sorry for scions of multi-million, billion-dollar families and stuff like this. And of course, RFK Jr. is a complete jerk. But he did not grow up in the best of circumstances, sure. and I don't want to make fun of an addictive personality.
No, but you can't make fun of his writing.
Okay, and now we get to the final part of this. Oh, and I'm sorry, to bring to the last little member of the Star Wars Cantina is the fact that RFK Jr. now is married to ... Cheryl Hines, who played Larry David's wife on Curb Your Enthusiasm. So finally what you should know is the third part of this is even more scorching. And the gist of it is that what Olivia Nuzzi did is once she got involved with RFK Jr. and is having these disgusting video sex sessions with him, is she basically becomes part of his presidential campaign and an informal advisor. And again, it's pretty clear he has access to all her emails. He was getting him booked on Fox News and working to get him Secret Service protection and giving him advice and just basically taking over, jostling elbows with other women in his circle and finding out if Cheryl was going to leave him and all this stuff.
And Lizza heavily implies, without saying, that the thing that Nuzzi was most famous for in 2024, other than this affair, was the article she wrote about Joe Biden being too old, where she was basically the first person in the mainstream media to really go hard on Joe Biden being too old. Lots of people had been speculating about it, been nibbling around the edges, and then she wrote this big piece, which she spent months writing, saying it's a conspiracy. He's too old. Everyone knows it. Behind the scenes, everyone's talking about it. The guy's falling to bits. She was the first person to do that, and she went big. And what Lizza is heavily implying, without saying it, is she did that to help RFK Jr.
Yeah. Exactly. And I just, as a journalist too, I believe that story came out after the disastrous debate.
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it did. We can check that out. But
I think it might have been just before, I reckon. After the debate.
In debate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I thought it did. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and just to wrap up, though, this is the most serious charge of all, is that here she is, an operative for a major, an operative for a major and very prestigious American publication. She's writing these stories and doing all this nefarious and weird stuff behind the scenes for this total basket case guy. And then it ends with this absolutely sensational allegation, which is that somehow or other there was some artist that Donald Trump liked, and she finagled to get the artist into Mar-a-Lago to see Trump. And she gave the artist a tape recorder to tape him. And I meant to look up in what the law is. In America, there's one party and two party approval when it comes to taping. Okay, so there's some states where you can tape someone with one person, i.e. you. Like I can tape you in a private conversation, not tell you. Others, both people have to know, and that's illegal. I don't know what that is in Florida. Okay, and then I just want to read you the end of this. So she's doing all these terrible ridiculous things. This is another level of nefariousness to secretly tape, to put a tape, clandestinely into someone I guess he would have been the president. Would he have been the president? Or,
No, it's
yeah, maybe not the president. Yeah. She sent Izzy inside Trump's Palm Beach compound with a recorder in her bag, which rolled as Izzy drew Trump, who was taking campaign meetings. With any luck, she would capture some great material for her piece and some intel for Bobby as he negotiated the endorsement. According to Olivia, when Izzy left the session, Izzy was hung up on something she believed Trump might have said about Butler, Pennsylvania. Something explosive that, if she were correct, would shatter our understanding of recent history.
Once again, sounds very much like he's trying to make money out of this.
Absolutely. every single one ends with a cliffhanger like this. The first one ends with the line, "I called my agent, quote, I think Olivia is having an affair with Mark Sanford."
Yeah.
So each one does that. So anyway, so that brings you up to everything about 5 hours ago. Yeah. And as you can tell, it's a delicious story, raises all these questions about journalistic ethics. I think he's completely ruined her career. Now Vanity Fair cannot keep her on staff if half those allegations are true. And she's going to be forever punchline. But you can pretty much bet that 6 months from now, she's going to have a podcast and her own Substack and possibly an OnlyFans.
I will say this for Ryan Lizza, unlike Olivia Nuzzi, he is a good writer. He knows how to make something interesting.
I think he is too. And Dave Smith gave him some shade the other day on Facebook. And the more I read these, I think they're very well constructed.
No, I think he's a good writer. But I got to say, and like I said before, the fact that I know him, the fact I've spoken to him a fair bit and like him doesn't stop me criticizing the guy. He comes off as seriously creepy in these missives, I've got to say. I mean, like, there's a quote I got here. "I spent an afternoon on my knees carefully arranging scores of her boots, high heels, sneakers, and slippers on an enormous shoe rack." He shares that with us to show how much of a good boyfriend he is. He comes off like a weird fetishist. And there's a lot of that vibe to me in this piece. Like, he seems like a bitter ex-boyfriend who seems way possessive and way creepy, I have to say. Yeah,
and he doesn't quite go into the generational differences, and I think that's part of it too. I think, 20 years is a big difference.
Yeah, but having said that, he is clearly trying to not get into the lasciviousness too much. Like, he doesn't talk about phone sex or anything. He doesn't do any of that. Yeah. Like, what he's focusing on, at least so far, are the journalistic lapses. And you only just brushed over some of them. Like, some of them are terrible. Like, for instance, once again, who knows if Liz is telling the truth here? But according to him, she was doing her best to find out all the gossip from the campaign, from the RFK campaign, and then finding out who were the enemies, who was a whistleblower for inappropriate behaviour in the Kennedy campaign, finding it out, convincing them to not go public, and then going and telling RFK who they were, dobbing on her confidential sources, to their boss, essentially. Like, they could not be more unethical than that.
Right, and specifically a guy who came to her wanting to leak something, which, again, we have to assume is in her text or in an email, pretty much literally that. And so that's, again, so much of this is just... just for the record, she should have told New York Magazine that she had this inappropriate affair. There's so many things she should have done. And
so many things she should have done. Yeah. Like, also, like, once again, assuming Liz is telling the truth, he reckons that, like, when she thought there was another journalist who was a little bit too close to Bobby for her liking, because she just became obsessed with the guy, she would go on Reddit and make up anonymous posts to try and scandalize that journalist, to try and destroy them. Before then, she realized that didn't work. So then she cultivated her as a friend, so she could get all her scoops and then just give them back to Bobby, so Bobby could screw her over. Like, it's pretty messed up. Yeah. Right. So,
it just keeps giving and giving and giving. And again, his name's Ryan Lizza, Lizza. And it's called the Telos, Telos newsletter, and it's going to be some fun reading, because I think he says today he's only halfway through.
Yeah, I think he said there was 7. He might not even be halfway through yet. Like, there's definitely more to come. The other thing I was going to say is a little takeaway is that on the Biden age thing, I think that's actually a great example. if we take anything out of this that isn't gossip, it's a great example of why ethical journalists were concerned about doing the Biden age thing. Because you go, look, we're not dealing with objective truth here. We're dealing with subjective judgments about someone's state of mind, which is hard to find proof for. Like if you got a story you can verify, sure, tell your story. But if all you're doing is speculating about whether all his marbles are there or not, there's no way you can measure that as a journalist if you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So any of those kinds of articles are going to be shadowy. They're going to be subjective. And if you're an ethical journalist, you'd be uncomfortable with that because you'd be going, am I being fair here? Or am I just allowing my bias to speak here? And in the case of Olivia Nuzzi, she clearly was allowing her bias to speak here, even though she was right in hindsight. You can understand why an ethical journalist wouldn't want to write that article.
Yeah. And you don't want to – the other thing is you just don't want to raise the question. You just say, hey, I shouldn't do this. I'm Boff and RFK Jr. Someone else should write the story.
Oh, yeah. I'm not doing about the affair. I'm like yeah. It goes without saying that everything she did you shouldn't do. I'm just talking about a non-Nuzzi non-Nuzzi takeaway. All right. While we're talking RFK, he has been in the news. I should just deal with this quickly. If you head over to the CDC official page
now,
about autism, you'll see this right here. If we could just show us, Lockie. At the top of the page, you'll see these 3 points, key points. I said this is the very top of the page, the key points. All right? The claim vaccines do not cause autism is not an evidence-based claim because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism. Studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities, and HHS has launched a comprehensive assessment of the causes of autism, including investigations on plausible biologic mechanisms and potential causal links. Then straight after those 3 points, you have the heading of the page, and that heading of the page is, vaccines do not cause autism, asterisk. And you might be thinking, hang on, there's a bit of a contradiction there, a weird contradiction between the heading saying vaccines do not cause autism and the key points above that heading suggesting very much that vaccines do cause autism, or at least you can't say they don't cause autism, at the very least.
Yeah.
And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see where the asterisk takes you and explains something. It says, the header, vaccines do not cause autism, has not been removed due to an agreement with the chair of the US Senate Health, Education, Labour and Pensions Committee that it would remain on the CDC website. So it explains it's just there because of a deal. And the rest of the page, in between that heading and that asterisk explanation, is just very detailed, cherry-picked, distorted evidence for why maybe you should be a little nervy about vaccines. Maybe. Now, that page, that autism's page for the CDC, previously said studies have shown there is no link between receiving vaccines and developing autism spectrum disorder. And also it said that the National Academy of Medicine review of 8 routine immunisations found, with rare exceptions, these vaccines are very safe. All of that is true. But the page now says it is critical to address questions the American people have about the cause of autism to ensure public health guidance is adequately responsive to their concerns. And you know what? I agree with them. It is critical to address those questions. This page doesn't address those questions. This page amplifies those questions. That doesn't answer anything. And the CDC on this page is actually accusing the CDC of ignoring evidence, which is very strange. Now, to be accurate, this page does acknowledge that reviews on the measles, mumps and rubella vaccine concluded there is no association between the MMR vaccine and autism. But then it immediately condemns all those reviews it just acknowledged and said they were methodologically flawed. It also asserts that the rise in autism rates correlates with the rise in the number of vaccines given to infants. Talk about methodologically flawed. You know what else correlates with the rise in the numbers of the rise of autism rates? Rap music. The spread of rap music also corresponds with increasing autism rates. I don't think rap causes autism.
Yeah.
Like you can do it, you can play.
And also
the
decades-long decline in crime.
Yeah,
that could be it.
Maybe that's
less
making
crime,
autistic people.
more autism.
You could hypercolor T-shirts. Yeah, they came about the same time as this big, huge increase in autism rates.
Yeah.
You could do this forever, but you see this over and over again from RFK, right? Super high standards for any research which suggests vaccines don't cause autism, and zero standards for any claims that vaccines do cause autism. That's the way it works. This double standard over and over again. When they say the claim vaccines do not cause autism is literally unprovable, they're right. It is literally unprovable. I mean, as Jake Scott, a professor at Stanford Medical School, wrote, scientists can't prove vaccines never cause autism because proving a universal negative is logically impossible.
Right.
Or as another scientist noted in the article I read, you can't prove umbrellas don't cause autism either. It's true.
Exactly. Hey, and if people are interested, I have a slightly personal interest in this because RFK Jr. had a big article in Salon, which is where I worked for a long time, and my friend Joan Walsh edited it, and she's a columnist at The Nation right now. And if you look that up, and she has a great column about what RFK put her through and all his, his sort of insistence to her and lack of whatever. And she basically published this article that she had a lot of issues with and ended up, having to correction, and finally had to retract the whole article. And she has a great column in The Nation explaining the whole process, how embarrassed she was by it, and how insistent and insane RFK Jr. was even back then.
Yeah. I want to give you an example of how this works from the page itself. Let's have a look at this page. They say at one point in time, evidence from a large Danish cohort study reported no increased risk for neurodevelopmental disorders with early childhood exposure to aluminium-absorbed vaccines. But a detailed review of the supplementary tables shows some higher event rates of neurodevelopmental conditions with moderate aluminium exposure, and a statistically significant 67% increased risk of Asperger's syndrome per 1 milligram increase in aluminium exposure amongst children born between 2007 and 2018. Together, these findings warrant further investigation of aluminium exposures, high, low, and none, for a variety of childhood chronic diseases, including autism. Now, let's leave aside that while this indeed was an important study, Danish researchers examined medical records of more than 1 million children in this study. And, by the way, found no association between the amount of aluminium present in vaccines and 50 different medical conditions. Okay, it's important. But leaving that aside, that Kennedy rubbishes that study all the time in other contexts. Now he's using it for his purposes, right?
Yeah.
Apparently it doesn't meet his exacting standards in other contexts. And certainly its conclusion isn't worth considering at all. Forget that. But he's still cited here because of that relationship between moderate aluminium exposure and neurodevelopmental conditions. But what he doesn't mention, he mentioned that. But what he doesn't mention is that the relationship disappears when there's a high dose of aluminium.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Suggests that there's no connection at all. It's just data noise.
Yeah.
But he just highlighted the moderate dose connection. Another example from the same section I just read out. That supposed connection to Asperger's. He doesn't mention the effect was only seen in a subsample of 51 children. But in the same study, there was a separate analysis of 3,000 children with neurological disorders that didn't just find no connection, it actually found the opposite, that the more aluminium was associated with fewer problems. Now, no one's suggesting aluminium's good for neurodevelopment. They're just saying, once again, it's just data noise. And RFK just, whenever he finds data noise that corresponds to what he likes, he highlights it and whacks on the CDC page. There you go. There's some evidence. And he just shits all over the stuff that he doesn't agree with. Yeah. That's the way he works.
I think you're saying he's intellectually dishonest and a crank.
I would call that, I hope you're sitting down, I would call his analysis methodologically flawed. That's what I would. Yeah. For what's worth, the Autism Science Foundation said, we are appalled to find that the content on the CDC webpage, Autism and Vaccines, has been changed and distorted and is now filled with anti-vaccine rhetoric and outright lies about vaccine and autism. And by the way, in case you're wondering how this happened, if there's any doubt, what kind of scientists would agree to this? The answer is, of course, none.
None, right.
Right? It's like there was a period there about a day where various CDC people were giving out quotes saying, we have no idea how it got there. We'd never even heard about this until the day it changed. And then RFK conducted an interview with the New York Times just admitting, I'm the one who... Yeah. I'm the code red. I'm not called the code red. I'm the one who changed the website. He might have changed it physically himself for all I know. Obviously, it's unheard of for an HHSC chief to not go through scientists before altering long-standing policy, let alone changing policy that defies contemporary science.
Right, yeah, on such a public way, on such a serious thing. I mean, those things are incredibly overdetermined. Yeah.
Completely unheard of. Okay, so...
And I just feel so sorry about the poor web people because, he just woke up agitated some morning and started ordering people around and do it, and then calling them. And you can just imagine the frenetic bullshit that went on that day just to get all that done. And everyone was horrified. And that's the way the Trump administration operates. I mean, they're crazy and they're bullies and they don't think and they have no respect for logic or facts.
Well, at this point in time as well, I want to end a story that began a while back, which is the story of Bill Cassidy. We've finally got the final chapter of this story.
Okay.
Now, you might recall Cassidy was the chair of he still is the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, the Senate committee, in charge of confirming RFK as the health secretary. Not only was he the chair, but he was the deciding vote.
Right.
It was up to him whether RFK was going to be confirmed as the health secretary. He was also in fear of being primaried before the 2026 elections because he famously voted to remove Trump from office after January 6th.
Right.
And he knows Trump didn't forget that. Right. And he was looking for an excuse to be able to confirm RFK. And RFK gave him an excuse. This is what Bill Cassidy explained is what helped him overcome his nagging doubts.
He has also committed that he had worked within current vaccine approval and safety monitoring systems and not establish parallel systems. If confirmed, he will maintain the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommendations without changes. CDC will not remove statements on their website pointing out that vaccines do not cause autism.
So he made 3 promises there. The last one is that RFK wouldn't change the website. so RFK honoured that promise with his hijinks that we just described in the little asterisk, the magic asterisk.
Right.
So he honoured the promise in word while not honouring it in spirit.
Right.
Anyway, the fact that RFK has so little integrity that he would blatantly mislead Cassidy like that, I think, says everything you need to know about how untrustworthy he is and how much of a zealot he is. But let's leave that aside. Let's look at the other 2 promises before that 3rd promise. The first one was he would work within the current vaccine approval and safety monitoring systems and not establish parallel systems. Well, not only did he establish a parallel system, but the parallel system was him. He changed the COVID vaccine rules and the CDC recommended immunisation schedule himself off his own bat, personally, without consulting anybody. That's a broken promise. Also, so the second one was that he will maintain the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention's Advisory Committee on immunisation practices without changes. I don't know if you remember this, Bill. He literally sacked every person on that board and replaced them with a bunch of his buddies. I would call that a change.
Yeah.
At best, it's once again not breaking the promise technically, but totally breaking it in spirit.
Yeah.
So he made 3 promises and only 3 promises to get confirmed, and now he is 0 for 3. And Senator Cassidy, a lot of people call him gullible. I don't call him gullible. I don't think he ever believed RFK. I think he was just desperate. I think he was a drowning man willing to grab a soggy newspaper if that's what he needed to grab to rescue him from the perfect storm. He needed to do whatever he could do to get out of trouble.
Yeah.
And, of course, he's still going to get primaried. All he's gotten out of this is Trump's promise to not endorse any of his opponents. I hope that was worth it to Bill Cassidy. And I'll just leave you, before I throw to any comments you might have, I'll leave you with the Children's Health Defence, which is RFK's crank organisation. Their quote about this whole thing, which is that this is, in their view, the biggest public health reversal of our lifetime. And they were saying that enthusiastically. I would agree with them, but not enthusiastically. So any thoughts you got, Bill?
No, it's just everything you say. It's just so sad. And there's so many departments in the Trump administration that you almost forget. You know, we haven't even mentioned the measles outbreak and all sorts of, there's all these other ridiculous things that are going to take probably half a generation to fix once these clowns get out of Washington. So can I talk about Ukraine for just a second?
Do quickly.
And I know you're going to do Ukraine later.
We're going to talk about Ukraine next with Elle, but you can start us off.
I just want to just mention one thing, just because in so much of the writing, again, and this is an example of how the media, to my and I'm always uncomfortable saying the media because it's so complicated and such a broad panorama of things you can always pick and choose. But the posturing of this the Ukrainian peace plan that the U.S. has been apparently purporting to put forth, that was leaked, whatever it was, a few days ago. It just like, so I grew up obviously during this era when everything the United States had done sort of in the post-war period. You have this new superpower right after the Second World War, sort of flexing its muscles around the globe, and did a lot of things for the benefit of the U.S. And so this is one of the things I always laugh when Trump says, oh, America's being punished or America's being taken advantage of, because America doesn't do anything that isn't in America's interest around the globe. I mean, and even when you come to things like the NAFTA agreement and stuff like this, you can make the argument, of course, that it might hurt parts of the American workforce, but of course it helps them in different ways. It gets them cheaper clothes, cheaper food, and this is the whole mantra we supposedly have in a capitalist society, is that you let the market forces work and you work to deal with it. So I grew up amongst this thing where, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Argentina, all these countries, and far beyond the Americas, and Vietnam and everywhere else, America has used its influence and power in ways that put so many millions of people bereft and did result in terrible, terrible things because of the minuets with China and the Soviet Union, and sometimes just out of sheer carelessness. And it goes up to the present time, like the abandonment of the Kurds in Iran. But all those things were done in one way or another to advance American interest, and particularly Nixon and Kissinger were the most famous operators of realpolitik and that sort of thing, that cold-blooded, men on the chessboard kind of thing. But what's going on right now with Ukraine is just so bizarre. And I'm obviously not a lifelong foreign policy expert or anything like this, but just as a living, breathing human, who follows politics over a lifetime, it's hard for me to understand this. I mean, we have NATO, which has contributed to a tenfold growth in America's economy over the past 30 or 40 years. There's this invasion by our enemy right on their doorstep, as people say, that's completely unprovoked, whatever anyone says, and is completely unlawful, and you just can't let happen. I mean, you just can't let your enemy just come in and take half your living room, or even if it's not technically your living room, half your front yard. You just can't, it's just incredible. I mean, no American president would let that happen. I mean, in the past 20, 30 years, we saw what happened in Kuwait. And things like Grenada, there's all these ways in which, American presidents said, oh, no, we're not going to. Panama is another example. And so here's this thing, far more than any of those, that has this direct effect on our allies on our future. And this president has been vacillating, obviously, ever since he's been in office. And then the things that go on this alleged peace plan, with the providence of which, I'm not even going to go into, basically, cedes territory to Russia and has about 20 other provisions of just absolutely ridiculous stuff. I don't know if you've read the whole thing, but there's even stuff like $100 billion for joint U.S.-Russian investment projects, quote, in specific areas, unquote. What does that mean? Why would you want to do investment projects with an enemy? Why would you contribute to their economy? And
I don't want them to be an enemy, Bill. That's why.
well, but then the other thing is the if you did want to look at this in a realpolitik way, I think what Nixon or Kissinger would say is, screw the Ukrainians. Let's just let this war just go on. Have everyone in the world hate the Russians, drain their coffers, let all their men get into the wood chipper, against the brave Ukrainians. Let's just let, this will destroy, contribute to this money drain from Russia, brain drain from Russia, demoralization, this sadness that takes that country even in the best of years. And you could just let Russia keep hanging itself. And they're not even doing that. And the point I just wanted to make is that in my lifetime, I cannot think of anything like this where these steps have been taken by an American president so complete. I mean, even in the context of all the outrageous things Trump does, it's hard to think of something, this betrayal of allies and American interests and rewarding this creepy, thuggish foreign power. And the final thing I want to make clear, that because this doesn't get mentioned either, is Russia is a very, very, very large country, right? But of course, it's a very small country economically. John McCain famously said it's a gas station with nuclear weapons. It has the size of the economy, I think, is of Florida, maybe. It's not that much bigger than Australia's. And the idea that the United States economy, which I think is 10 times larger than it, and then the EU's, which is 10 times larger than it, can't stand up to this creepy little tiny bully on its border is again just crazy. And Biden, I think, always said the right things. He didn't quite do it in the right way, but he just said, look, this isn't going to stand, period. Just get the hell out of – that's the negotiating part thing is you get out of Ukraine, we'll start talking about it. So I don't understand the motivation. I don't understand if he's Putin's puppet, if he's just incompetent, if he's just sick of it and he just doesn't care and he has no – well, I think it's all these things, and particularly has no moral sense of right or wrong whatsoever. And that, I think, doesn't say enough that this is, in my understanding of American foreign policy of the past 100 years, completely without precedent and an outrageous betrayal on a level I can't approximate.
I was just going to say that, number one, that military size obviously doesn't reflect GDP size. I mean, and that's the best illustration of that is not Russia. The best illustration of that is Ukraine. Ukraine's that much smaller than Russia again.
Yeah.
Yet some would argue that Ukraine is damn close to the
stalemating them.
Well, not just to Russia, but close to it's getting to one of them as far as in terms of practical terms. It's getting up to the most effective militaries in the world, including America.
Yeah.
Like if warfare today is about drones, Ukraine kicks America's ass. Yeah. They can have all the aircraft carriers they like. But if Ukraine is just the world leader in drone warfare, and that is where that is the cutting edge of warfare, then Ukraine is punching way above its weight. America is literally learning from Ukraine right now how to do it. Yeah. That is Ukraine's best use to America. Teach us how to be like you militarily. Yeah. So military strength is not necessarily about the size of the country or the size of the economy. But the other thing I'd say is not off you, but it's just I'm reminded of what you were saying, from what you were saying. I didn't say this when I was talking to Elle last night about this, is that for those who don't understand, I was going to add one more thing. The J.D. Vance side don't think of Ukraine as an ally. They think of Ukraine as a leech, not an ally. Yeah. So that's part of the mindset as well. But I was going to also say that that for those in Americans and those Americans, those listening who think, why can't Ukraine just they don't have the cards? Why don't they just take it and move on? It's just intolerable to accept. I want Americans to think of if Mexico was Russia and or was in league with Russia and had all these missiles on the border of the American border, how paranoid America would be about that and how desperate they would be to build their defenses as high as possible, and for anyone to not expect Ukraine to just expect Ukraine to just accept that they have no defense against this massive military power on their border and just take it. It's just, they're not showing much imagination, I feel. It's not tenable for a country to just accept that state of affairs, which is the reason in the Elle bit I talk about Donbass in particular as a critical part of their defense. I just think people should be thinking more about Ukraine's defense And I think that if Ukraine felt they were 100% defended from Russia, they'd give up almost anything. I think they just want to be defended. Like I think they want security. That's what this is about. Ukraine, I think, would give up all kinds of land if the rest of Ukraine would remain secure.
Right, but actually the peace plan, I think, kind of has words to that effect. However, it has a lot more for Russia's benefit. Like NATO won't expand. They won't build up the. There's all these reasons.
But I don't even think it's about the fairness about Ukraine giving up more than Russia. I think it's about Ukraine doesn't trust, and rightly so, doesn't trust the supposed security being
No, and I hear what you're saying, but I
Yeah.
think this is a little more like I don't think it's up to Ukraine anymore because I think the EU and NATO is just going to step up.
Yeah.
I don't think the EU and NATO is going to accept this. They're not going to let Russia take over part of Ukraine. And the other thing is, of course, that's what Joe Biden was doing back in the day. He was trying to decorrupt Ukraine and kind of being a statesman-like thing, like, hey, let's get your country out of being this basket case, and we want you to be able to join the European Union. We want a vast new middle class to buy American products and buy your wheat and stuff like this. I mean, it's in everyone's benefit to have a non-corrupt Ukraine part of the European system, right?
Yep.
And that's all we want.
Thank you
very
so much,
Yeah,
Bill.
that was great.
Thank you. We will now head on to part 1B of our Odyssey. Welcome, Elle Hardy. Welcome to the second leg of our end-of-year Odyssey. This is part 1B of our PEPmas Peps Giving 2025 crossover special. And we are joined now by Elle Hardy. Hello, Elle.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Now, we got a couple of topics here. We're just going to rattle on here, because we've got so much to cover. The first thing you had on that you wanted to talk about, which I'm glad you wanted to talk about, because I want to talk about as well, is Mamdani and Trump. Now, I'll set the scene and you can take over from there. We knew something was coming when we saw this truth from Trump about 2 weeks ago. Communist Mayor of New York City, Zoran Kwame Mamdani, has asked for a meeting. We've agreed this meeting will take place at the Oval Office on Friday, November 21st. And I got to say, I love the way Trump put Kwame in inverted commas. That's actually Mamdani's middle name. But he's using it like it's some super racist nickname, which I love.
Yeah, it's a real thing on the online, right? It's a bit like, how it's always Barack Hussein Obama.
I know, but I didn't put Hussein in inverted commas. That's what I love. It gives you a sense of why people are expecting fireworks from this meeting. Kwame in inverted commas. That, and of course, and the fact that Trump has tweeted out all kinds of crap about Mamdani over the months. I got one here as an example. This is from primary night a few months back. It's finally happened. The Democrats have crossed the line. Zoran Mamdani, 100% communist lunatic, has just won the Dem primary and is on his way to becoming mayor. We've had radical lefties before, but this is getting a bit ridiculous. He looks terrible. His voice is grating. He's not very smart. He's got AOC +3, dummies all backing him, and even our great Palestinian senator, crying Chuck Schumer, is groveling over him. Yeah, there's so many things to love about that tweet. But anyway, we're expecting fireworks, at least many were. You might not have been. But no, Trump was super nice. And I'm going to play, just before I let you go here, I'm going to play Trump's opening comments just to set the scene from the presser. For once, they didn't go on for 10 minutes like his opening comments often do. They were just 1 minute and 20, which is why I can play them. And they were extremely gracious, but I also think they gave a little bit of insight into what might have been going on, which is why I want to play them in full. His full opening comments, here they are.
Thank you very much. We've just had a great meeting, a really good, very productive meeting. We have one thing in common. We want this city of ours that we love to do very well. And I wanted to congratulate the mayor. He really ran an incredible race against a lot of smart people, starting with the early primaries against some very tough people, very smart people. And he beat them easily, and I congratulated him. And we talked about some things in very strong common, like housing and getting housing built, and food and prices, and the price of oil is coming way down. That anything I do is going to be good for New York. If I can get prices down, it's good for New York. And we've got them down, way down from last year. We have, as you know, I've been saying to a lot of people, Walmart said that Thanksgiving this year is exactly 25% less than last year. So that's good for New York, good for everybody. But I just want to congratulate. I think you're going to have hopefully a really great mayor. The better he does, the happier I am, I will say. There's no difference in party. There's no difference in anything. And we're going to be helping him to make everybody's dream come true, having a strong and very safe New York. And congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Please.
So, all very civilized. And then the first question was from the New York Post, who, of course, tried to bait both of them. And Trump's response is really what set the tone for this presser.
For you, you've referred to Mr. Mamdani as a communist. Could you describe why you feel that way? And also, will you do anything to stop him from arresting Prime Minister Netanyahu if he visits New York?
Well, we didn't discuss your second part of the question. And on your first part, I mean, he's got views that are a little out there, but who knows? I mean, we're going to see what works, or he's going to change also. We all change. I changed a lot. From when I first came to office. It's now quite a while ago. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually. And some very liberal people he won't surprise them because they already like him.
And then we had 30 more minutes, Elle, of people trying to bait both of them, and both of them refusing to say anything that wasn't positive. So, Elle, tell us your thoughts about this meeting and what you thought was going on.
Well, I was lucky enough to watch the press conference live because, I was expecting the fireworks. Trump had such a good time. Like, I was trying to think the last time he's had such a good time. And the first thing that comes to mind is when he had the burger party at the White House in his first term,
yes.
With all the football players.
Yes, yes.
And he was sort of, standing out surveying his kingdom of burgers. Yes. I don't think I've seen him have that much of a good time since then. He was yucking it up. He was stepping in and taking bullets for Mamdani whenever someone was asking awkward questions. Trump was, he was like, no, he didn't want to ruin the vibe. Yeah. So he took the despot, the fascist, the anti-Semitic ones, just every time they wanted to stray off course. It's funny to think about because obviously they both are, very on about affordable living and cost of living and that sort of thing. So it does make sense for them both to hammer that and to have their common cause. But I genuinely think that Trump's calculations are rarely political. They're often financial, and more often than not, they're quite social. And the thing about Mamdani is he's handsome and he's a winner. And he's kind of a celeb now. You know, he's like a one-name kind of guy. And Trump loves those people. He just wants to be around handsome winners. And Mamdani, he played a blinder. He sort of stood slightly behind him, very deferential and respectful, sort of nodding the whole time, hands clasped. Yeah, he's just a nice, polite young man in a nice suit. He's handsome, he's a winner, and Trump loved him.
Can I just add, before we go on, just on that point, not only is he a handsome young man in a nice suit, and Trump definitely likes people dressing up and paying respect, but on top of that, I think people forget this, that Mamdani is very much from that upper middle class cast of New Yorkers that Trump has spent his entire life wanting to be loved by. Like literally his entire adult life has been trying to gain approval from those people who have always looked down on him, always. And as he became more successful and president, they looked down on him even more, ironically. And he probably got a real chip on his shoulder about that. And here's Mamdani, the hero of that group of people, paying tribute to him and genuinely being very respectful. I reckon he would have loved that.
Absolutely. And Trump showed him way more respect than he's ever shown his sons. Don Jr. doesn't get that level of respect. Don Jr. doesn't know to wear a nice suit, for starters, or when to shut up. I don't know if you saw that quote from Trump the other week after President Xi, after they had their meeting. And Trump was saying, all of Xi's aides are too terrified to speak when he's around.
Yes, I saw
and he's
that.
like, I wish my people showed me that kind of deference. JD's always butting in.
Yeah.
But yeah, he showed way more respect than he's ever shown JD Vance, Eric, Don Jr.
And Mamdani showed more respect than JD Vance shows. He was showing that deference. He was just standing there very politely. It's true.
Yeah, there was actually an op-ed, I think it was yesterday, in the Times of India, saying that he'd kind of done he'd put on a masterclass of South Asian culture which is kind of respecting your batshit crazy uncle as he goes on about his crazy idea and just saying yes, yes, even though you're not going to obey.
Also, I mean, along the same lines as well, Mamdani is very cool, and Trump likes being around cool people. Like he knows who's cool, and he knows that Kid Rock is not cool. And it's very rare and far between that Republicans get to hang around cool people. And those cool people like the Republican hanging around them. And Trump used to be one of those people who did hang around cool people like 15 years ago. But, lately it's been, Scott Baio. So I think he would have enjoyed himself. And all those cameras, he always likes when the cameras are on. I think there's an underrated aspect of it. It's just would have been fun for him.
Yeah, and there's one, sort of my theory that Trump is just a savant of television. He is pretty good at picking a star. Like he kind of plucked Paula White Cain from nowhere to be his evangelical kind of person. And I think he just has a sense of people that look good on TV. And the thing is, Mamdani he's brilliant at staying on message. He doesn't get rumbled. Yeah. He always sounds very reasonable when he speaks. And he looks good, he sounds good. And I mean, Trump's opening statement, he opened with Mamdani's a winner.
Yeah.
And, the one thing that really impresses Trump more than anything is putting a number next to something, is quantifying something, whether it's TV ratings or poll numbers. And he sort of went on that long thing, I was, saw him when he was 3%, next minute he's 17. And then, he's easily impressed by numbers. He was, like I said, he likes a winner. And he saw him, wipe the floor with everyone. And I mean, ultimately, Trump is still a New York guy. He, sort of kept alluding to that in the presser that, I would have liked to have been mayor of New York. He obviously still has reverence for the position.
Literally, the first thing he said was, "We both love New York." Like right at the top there. And I think people watching that might have thought, "Oh yeah, sure," but I think it's true. I think they do both love New York. I think Trump does love New York, and I think it's probably, once again, a source of a chip on his shoulder that he's basically had to leave New York.
And as you said, it was so fascinating because the way that the press were all real, they thought there was blood in the water and they were really trying to stoke something. And they were so much more hostile to Mamdani than Trump was.
Yeah. Trump is defending him over and like you say. Yeah. Actually, let's play one of those bits. You talked about the fascist thing where he jumped in the middle and basically saved Mamdani. That was actually my favourite bit of the press conference. So I'll play it and then I'll just make a point.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes. Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
The thing for me about that moment, Elle, and the reason I wanted to play it was because I think these days you almost forget why people used to like Trump. And I don't mean Republicans. I mean everyone. Like when he first came on the scene, there were people who were horrified by the racism and all the rest of it. But he was fun to watch. Early on, CNN couldn't get enough of him, even though they were politically opposed to him. They couldn't get enough of the showtime. And the reason for that was not just because he said crazy shit, but because there was a fun, spirited surprise element to Trump. You just never knew what he was going to come out with. And he's basically completely lost it these days. Like he's just tired and grumpy and he's old and he's worn down, he's angry. The sense of fun is just gone. And this was the first time I've seen him have a sense of fun for ages. And that moment was just a moment I just thought, fuck, that's right. He used to be fun once. He used to be like that a lot more. And it's and I think, I mean, look, I don't want to give him any advice. I know he's a pepper, but like if we saw that side of him a lot more, I think his numbers would be higher. I got to say.
Yeah, what fascinated me, I mean, the kind of authoritarian despot stuff, that was, fun Trump. But even on the ICE question, Trump was taking bullets for him on that. Yeah. And, that's obviously one area where they do have a very, very strong disagreement. And that is still, I mean, I guess Trump might say tariffs is his signature policy, but certainly ICE is if not equal, then certainly up there. And he just kind of kept letting Mamdani off the hook about it and said, he doesn't want crime either. That was probably the most remarkable thing of all to me, that he really could have at least staked his position, because ultimately it is that, big blue cities, people can't walk down the streets of New York anymore. Trump can do all of that false nostalgia stuff. And, he slips into it pretty easily. And he didn't even want to go for it.
Yeah, maybe it's possible that, like, just on the lines of what we're talking about, that he was just having a good time. Maybe Mamdani reminds him of what it was like 8 years ago when he first won, and it was exciting and it was new. And Mamdani's fresh and maybe he just had a moment where, this used to be fun. Like remember the day after I won? That was exciting, wasn't it? Like maybe Mamdani helped remember. I just felt like Trump was in a different place, and I don't know if Mamdani helped him or not. I don't know.
The photos that Trump posted on Truth Social afterwards as well were very funny. He's beaming, he's doing the thumbs up. Meanwhile, Mamdani is actually sort of the one who has to look quite solemn and like he's not enjoying, because he can't be seen to be prowling around with the fascists in chief. And so he's trying to, to not be grinning, even in front of the FDR portrait.
Totally. Like Trump's there with his big smile, like he can show it to us, with his big smile, the thumbs up. And Mamdani looks like a kind of a pleasant waxwork. He's not being rude, but he's just very controlled, and he's clearly not having nearly as good a time as Trump is. Also when he was behind the desk, this is pretty much the only photo you ever see of someone standing behind the Resolute desk next to Trump, where the other person seems less happy than Trump. Usually it's the other way around. They've got caps and they're like, yeah, they're just having the time of their life. But this time it was the other way around, which was interesting as well.
Oh, no, I was going to say, usually it's kind of the January 6 All-Stars. I do have to mention, though, Trump did drop one of his favourite lines again. Yeah. So, Dave's obsession with Trump's obsession that they have never found a paint that looks truly like gold.
Yes.
Trump dropped his favourite line about how groceries is an old-fashioned word.
Yes, I did see that.
He started on that again, and he said, but it's coming back, and it's very accurate.
It's very accurate. I will say, it's with the ice thing. You mentioned the ice thing. I felt like there were a couple of times when you saw potential framing strategies from Mamdani behind the scenes. You saw the results of it. And that ice thing I thought might be one of them, because obviously immigration enforcement was going to be a potential issue, because everyone was expecting Trump to send ICE into New York next, essentially. And the way Trump just immediately associated immigration with crime, it just thought to myself, I feel like Mamdani might have put that thought in his head to say, look, we might disagree on immigration enforcement, but we both agree on getting rid of criminals. I don't want crime. Like, I could see that's the kind of thing that might have been going on behind the scenes. And it wasn't just that. It was also the way Trump kept on saying, we both want to build more houses. I thought Mamdani fed that to him behind the scenes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the developer brain right there.
Yeah. Something I like about you, Donald, is that we both want to build houses. That's something in common. I could see that. And also Trump repeated a few times that talking point of Mamdani's, that 10th of his voters were Trump voters. So, so Mamdani's win was kind of like Trump's win in a way. I could see, so I think he was clever about that as well. But I was just going to say a couple other things about this, which I think might have been part of it as well. Mamdani's one who set up the meeting, not Trump. Trump likes that. Think about how many times he whines about Democratic mayors and governors not meeting with him. Going, what? I want to help you. Why don't you just ask for some help? And Mamdani actually asked for help, which is something that Trump loves. He likes being respected by the opposition. And so I think that was smart from Mamdani, because he obviously needs help. I think Trump loves defying expectations. I took a little grab here of, it's not a grab, it's a quote from just a random lefty blog from the morning of. I was looking through lefty blogs the morning of it happened, just seeing what they were saying directly beforehand. And these were the expectations. I'll just read you a quote First, let's see if Trump, 79 and increasingly erratic, thinks he still has the chops to control the narrative from this meeting with Mamdani, 34. Mamdani requested this meeting. He'll come prepared for a frontal attack even while he hopes to head off Trump's threatened cuts to the city's federal funding. Mamdani told reporters, I'll be ready for whatever happens. Will Trump go one-on-one with Mamdani's dazzle? Does Trump have the nerve? Or will he bring in J.D. Vance to double team him, as Trump did with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in February? That's the vibe. They're expecting a slapdown. And it wouldn't be the first time that Trump has done a direct opposite of what his opponents expect from him. And like I think he would have liked that as well. Just go, oh yeah, you expecting that? Yeah. Because there was a lot of he just seemed to be having a good time. I think that might have been part of it as well. But also, policy-wise, this is a bit smart-arsey, but I think it's true. They're both socialists. Like, Mamdani calls himself a socialist and Trump doesn't. But you look at their policies, like Trump is a right-wing socialist. That's what he is. So they've actually got more in common, I think.
Would you say he's a national socialist, Chas?
I guess so. I didn't mean it that way, but that might be what you take out of it.
I'll tell you what, though, he did mention when he was sort of, Trump kept going back to what they have in common. And I think your prediction is slowly coming true because Trump said about prices.
Yeah,
that he's going to wind up doing price fixing.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
And that's what Mamdani's been on about. With those the 5 grocery stores. Old-fashioned word, but very accurate. I think he's going down that route. And clearly affordability is it's the only game in town right now.
Yeah.
And so you can see them both coming to conclusions. So it's it's certainly not false, even though they'll, obviously disagree. I did actually see, I think it was yesterday, the New York Post had, a very obvious briefing from the White House that was trying to reframe it a bit. Mm-hmm. They said the meeting was brokered by a New York business titan close to Trump, who believes the president should play the long game with Lefty Mamdani for the good of the city and his own agenda, particularly as it relates to deportations.
Yeah.
And then someone told the New York Post, it might have been the original John Barron, Trump is playing nice for now, but if Mamdani doesn't allow deportations or defunds the police or goes full-on communist, Trump is ready to lower the hammer.
Just so the Peppers realise, when Elle says the original John Barron, she means Trump, who used to call himself John Barron when he rang up newspapers and gave tips on behalf of himself. Yes, but yeah. Yeah, look, that would make sense as well, I guess. Yeah. I mean, why would he go hard now? There's no point.
Yeah. But I think, I don't know, it's starting to sense that he maybe is feeling slightly rattled because, within half an hour of that press conference, it was already a meme. You know that photo of Trump looking up at him, beaming, the love heart eyes, kind of going full Looney Tunes. And so, I don't know if he's slightly rattled or not because another thing I saw was Jake Sherman from MSNBC sort of tweeted out that he's been being briefed for ages by all the Republicans that basically their entire 2026 midterm strategy was tying Mamdani to the Democrats. And now Trump has just kind of gone and blown that up.
Well, I was going to ask about that. What does this do to that talking point? Because they've spent ages seeding that. Like you've got just the day that Mamdani was there in Congress, they were passing a resolution to condemn socialism as part of this whole push. And the Democrats are clearly so neurotic about this. 86 of the Democrats voted to condemn socialism because they were that scared of this talking point. And Trump just destroyed it completely. Here's an example with him to Elise Stefanik.
Republican Elise Stefanik has campaigned multiple times by calling Zohran Mamdani a jihadist. Do you think you're standing next to a jihadist right now in the Oval Office?
No, I don't, but she's out there campaigning, and you say things sometimes in a campaign.
Isn't that sort of
She's a very capable person, but you really have to ask her about that. But no, I don't particularly. I think I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again.
That's the Muslim side of the scary Muslim socialist. But then, they asked Mamdani himself about the socialism thing, and he gave exactly the kind of answer Trump would have loved. We got that here.
I'm going to ask the mayor-elect about a House resolution. It just passed overwhelmingly to condemn socialism, including with 86 Democrats all of House Dem leadership and the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, despite his endorsement of you. What's your reaction to that?
I have to be honest with you, I focused very little on resolutions. Frankly, I've been focusing...
Condemn socialism.
I understand. I think the focus is on the work at hand. I can tell you I am someone who is a democratic socialist. I've been very open about that. And I know there might be differences about ideology, but the place of agreement is the work that needs to be done to make New York City affordable. That's what I look forward to.
Once again, no apologies, no defensiveness, which Trump would have appreciated. Just steer the conversation what you want to talk about, which is affordability, which is what all Trump wanted to talk about, which is another reason why, of course, they would have, that there was pleasantries, because Trump's trying to take as much shine, much of Mamdani's affordability shine as possible at the moment, because he knows he's on the nose. He's polling in the mid-20s when it comes to inflation at the moment. Like, he's desperate. And so Mamdani would have helped him here. And that makes sense. But my point is, while he's doing that, he's destroying the socialism talking point, because he's rehabilitating Mamdani as a completely reasonable person who we should all get behind. Do you think that makes a difference, or do you think in 2 months' time we've all forgotten this and socialism talking point is back?
I mean, yeah, it's always just such an easy cudgel to reach for. So I don't think it completely kills it. And, you know, there's every chance that he and Mamdani fall out about something,
I'm sure they will.
yeah, it's going to happen. But I mean, I think that the lessons here are clearly much more for the Democrats, which is, you know, have a consistent message, go hard on the economy, don't get rattled, speak about tangible issues. No one really gives a shit about socialism. It's just an easy, it's kind of a lazy thing. Talk about these issues. Don't get waylaid. Don't get bogged down in, you know, because, I mean, Mamdani said at the White House, yes, I'm a democratic socialist. And what I care about is, you know, and he's the message king. Yeah. I think there's far more lessons for the Democrats in that than perhaps the Republicans in considering the strategy.
I just want to make one more point, and that is, for those who feel like this wasn't a deliberate choice from Trump, and we've mentioned a lot of reasons which wouldn't be deliberate choices, but I think the affordability one is the main one. There is proof that Trump came into this meeting planning to do this, and that is what he was saying before the meeting. Like, he was interviewed by Brian Kilmeade on the Fox radio beforehand, and Brian Kilmeade played all the usual grabs of Mamdani slagging him off, and Trump clearly was going in intentionally to be conciliatory. Let's have a look.
So it was a little bit of an in-your-face when a time he should usually, after a victory speech, be kind of magnanimous. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I was hitting him a little hard, too, in all fairness. I was, hard to be totally friendly toward the opponent. You know, his opponent wasn't. He had some interesting opponents. But he ran a good race. I don't know exactly what he means by turn the volume up, because turn the volume up, he has to be careful when he says that to me. But nobody really was able. I said, what does that mean, turn the volume up? Does that mean let's go at it?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, he was very nice in calling, as you know, and we're going to have a meeting. I guess we meet at 3 o'clock today. And I think it's going to be quite civil. We'll find out. You'll be the first to know.
So there's no doubt that was his strategy, to be nice. And then on top of it, I think he had some fun as well. But which is, that's why the stars in his eyes. By the way, you say he might be a bit rattled by the stars in his eyes memes. He wouldn't have seen any of those memes. Remember, he only looks at Truth Social. They wouldn't have been on Truth Social.
That's true. Well, yeah.
Anyway.
He only sees the AI stuff as well.
That's right.
Did you see Laura Loomer's meltdown?
Oh, because Mamdani's Muslim, yes. It's like she.
No.
It's another one.
Well, yeah. Afterwards, that Trump didn't, because she was saying beforehand, Trump's going to school him tomorrow. Everyone was expecting the full Zelensky moment. And then, she had just a meltdown on X afterwards. Just saying it's wild to allow a jihadist communist to stand behind the president's desk in the Oval Office. Sad to see. And then, just things. So we're normalizing communism now. And she was very, very unhappy.
That's our Laura. I don't know if you have much more to say about this topic, but I was just going to say one thing, which is that, of course they're going to have their fight soon. But if this is in Mamdani's interest more than anyone to play nice as long as he possibly can, because he's got a tough agenda in front of him here, and especially while Kathy Hochul's running for re-election, and she just can't be giving him too much of this stuff. While she's running against Elise Stefanik, who's going to be a pit bull. But the thing is that if he can get some help from Trump early on, they're going to be fighting. But if he can get in the cheat, and I get that it's going to be great for him to be the figure of resistance down the road, but get some achievements first. If he spends his entire 3 years or 4 years, whatever it is, 4 years, fighting Trump or whoever and achieving nothing, that's not going to help him win re-election. Like, it'd be great for him to get some achievements under his belt, and then he can become a figure of resistance in 18 months. I don't know if Trump's going to let him, but if he can pull that off, just get one or two things that he can then refer to in the future, I think that will help him a lot. So I think it's in his interest to be nice as long as he possibly can.
Absolutely. And I mean, New York City has balanced budget stuff. So, funds being held up, even, how constitutionally viable or whatever that is, that's a problem. And I mean, his campaign is that on tangible stuff. It's on actual policies with numbers and outcomes, and they're very clear. And so if he's not going to deliver those, it's certainly going to be a problem. So it's obviously in his interest to be conciliatory. Yeah. The only other thing I did want to mention, because, first of all, he didn't actually refer to Mamdani as handsome, which I was expecting. Because, he was the Syrian president. He always says how handsome he is. Yes. So I was very disappointed in that, because I had a wager with friends of how many handsomes we'd get in that press conference. I think I took over 2.5. Yeah. But also, Trump was having such a good time. He didn't even make Mamdani do my favorite thing, which he made MBS do earlier in the week, which was agree that America is the hottest country.
Well, to be fair, Mamdani isn't a foreigner as much as you'd think from some Republicans he was. He's not, so it doesn't fit quite as well. But still,
but he loves making people agree that America is currently the hottest country, like on the hot or not kind of magazine scale. I was disappointed that he didn't try to strong arm him into doing that, but he was having such a good time.
Yeah, that is quite sad. Let's just take a short break, then we'll be back with Ukraine. And we're back after the white flash for 1BB? I don't know, the second part of Elle's tour of duty in the PEPmas giving special, whatever you want to call it. Now, Elle, it seems that as part of your contract, for which you make so much money from PEP, Lockie's desperately signalling that I need to communicate that no one makes any money from PEP. She does not get paid. Elle, you have to talk about Ukraine every time you walk in here. It seems.
I know.
It's just always in the news. It's just always in the news when you're here. And it's so in the news now. Literally, we started 15 minutes late. This is, for those who don't know, we're recording all kinds of weird order. This is Wednesday night, Thursday morning in Australia, or Wednesday morning in America. Literally, news is breaking right now about this story. So we had to push it back 15 minutes, our record, so we can just read what is happening right now. So it's going to be so topical for us and so untopical for everyone listening. But nevertheless, Elle, let's start with the original 28-point peace plan. What were your thoughts on that one when you first heard about that?
Well, it goes back to after the Gaza peace plan had been enacted. So Kushner and Witkoff are on a flight from the Middle East to Miami, of course, and immediately pivoted to trying to find a Ukraine agreement. And it's, this thing's leaking like a sieve. There's so many, everyone's briefing, and basically it seems like they wanted to follow the same playbook as they did in Gaza, which is come up, draft a plan, and say to both sides, we have to come up with a deal. And you're going to have to get them to agree. I think it is probably worth noting. Do you know what next Friday is?
No, what's next Friday?
Friday, December 5th.
Next Friday is when I get some sleep.
Never.
What is it?
Friday, December the 5th is when FIFA is announcing its Peace Prize.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
in
right.
Washington.
In the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, where Trump is the director. I wonder who's going to win the FIFA Peace Prize. Because, if there's one thing I know about FIFA, it's that there's no corruption there. You know that,
none whatsoever.
That all their awards are for real. So I'm sure you can trust it will indeed be the most peaceful person on earth, whoever it is.
Indeed. And I am convinced that is why there is this urgency. It's also Trump's just going to lose interest. That's obviously the calculation that Zelensky has to make, is that Trump will just eventually throw his hands up and say, okay, we'll just let you guys rot. But yeah, I'm fairly convinced that this is all about trying to get the two big dogs over the line before the Peace Prize.
Look, that may well be the case. I was going to say Axios has a different theory, which we'll get to, about why the rush, why the deadline. Before we get into the intrigue, let's just talk about the actual plan itself. Was it obviously a lot of people were saying it was Russian rather than American. There was a lot of confusion about this. Were there bits that you thought were reasonable? Did you think what do you think was the least reasonable bit of the peace plan? What was your take on it?
I mean, these are, it's certainly not favourable to Ukraine, but these are the same ideas that have been floating around since the start of the war.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything particularly new other than, and this is why I do probably give some credence that it was much more drafted hand in hand with the Russians than the Ukrainians. You know, there's that bit about US getting 50% of the profits from the rebuilding ventures.
From the $100 billion.
And that was very...
$100 billion of frozen
that's very
assets.
clearly a sweetener.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also forcing the EU to match the 100 billion of Russian assets that'll be going into the Ukraine rebuilding fund, forcing the EU to match that feels like a bit of a backhander.
It does, but I also thought that might have been evidence that it wasn't 100% Russian, because I'm not sure Russians would have wanted any of their money to be spent on rebuilding Ukraine, and especially not to then just provide profits for America, because what the actual deal was $100 billion going to rebuilding Ukraine. They had $300 billion of frozen assets in Europe. $100 billion was going to go into directly rebuilding Ukraine, and the profits, 50% of that would go to America and 50% would go to Ukraine. And then the other $200 billion wasn't going back to Russia. It was going into like a joint US-Russian investment in Ukraine as well. So so none of it was going back to Russia. So that struck me as evidence that America had played a role. That sounded kind of Trumpy to me, less than Russian. You think Russia would want their money.
But construction contracts and things like that, Russian firms are going to be so involved in that.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
in this rebuilding and stuff like that. There's going to be, and there still is. I mean, the cross-country smuggling and mafia between the two countries is still highly cooperative.
Yeah.
And there just is such a relationship. It probably looks a bit better than it does, because I think Russia will see a lot of profits and things like that still flowing back to it.
The other thing I was going to say that might be a sign that Russia wasn't completely Russian is that if Russia had their way, Ukraine would not have 600,000 troops. There was a limit of 600,000 troops. That would still make Ukraine have easily the next biggest army in Europe after Russia. Easily. Like 600,000 troops. I mean, Ukraine weren't going to be happy with 600,000 troops. I'm not suggesting they would be happy. But if Russia was picking a number, it would be a lot less than 600,000, I suspect.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also, that's very expensive to maintain. And I mean, ultimately, Ukraine has always wanted other boots on the ground, which is just never going to be a starter. There's no way that Russia would ever agree to anything with NATO being there. I mean, I guess that the good thing for Ukraine would be, it's something I've been harping on about from the beginning, but NATO was never going to fly, but the EU should offer Ukraine fast-track membership.
Yeah.
And sort of let it become a sort of, like Hungary was initially, sort of the cheap manufacturing hub, and sort of rebuild your economy that way. And that's on the table, fast track and I think immediate market access to the EU market, which would be somewhat of a good thing.
I was going to say that area there was, I mean, for me, there were two areas that were just completely unacceptable and just reeked of Russia. That one was the inverted commas defense guarantee. Like, it's all right.
Yeah.
It's all right to reduce the army. Reducing the army from 900,000 down to 600,000. That'd be okay if you had some hotshot technology to defend your country with. But they rule out long-range missiles and nuclear deterrent. Okay, fine. That's okay if you've been defended by someone else. But they rule out foreign troops in the country, even international peacekeepers. And you go, okay, look, it kind of sounds like you're trying to make Ukraine a sitting duck here, but you could almost accept that if there was a great, watertight defense guarantee. The 28-point plan had pretty much nothing, but then there was a side agreement which had the following. A security guarantee modelled on NATO's Article 5, which would commit the US and European allies to treat an attack on Ukraine as an attack on the entire transatlantic community. And any future significant, deliberate and sustained armed attack by Russia on Ukraine shall be regarded as an attack threatening the peace and security of the transatlantic community. And you go, okay, well, maybe if it's based on NATO Article 5, but that guarantee is for 10 years. And there are huge loopholes there that America could worm their way out of it. For instance, saying it may involve military response. Not will, it may involve military response. And yeah, and after 10 years, they could just drop out anyway. Ask Ukraine how they feel about defense guarantees, security guarantees that last only a certain amount of time. They will all remember the 1994 Budapest Agreement, which at the time sounded wonderful. And now, 30 years later, doesn't seem so wonderful. And so they'd be thinking that if you leave us as a sitting duck, then you're here for 10 years, guaranteeing Russia doesn't take us out for 10 years. Then the 11th year, they're just going to plow over us. And they would be left as a sitting duck because the other thing, which is the Donbas, giving Russia the Donbas or even leaving it as a demilitarized zone is so untenable for Ukraine for a number of reasons. Firstly, they spent literally 4 years sacrificing tens of thousands of lives to save that area. Why? And if they just gave it up, that would be a huge dagger in the heart of their morale. But also, the reason why is because it's very rich in mining and resources with which to rebuild Ukraine. But much more important than that, it's got the high ground. It's got the fortifications. It's Ukraine's defense line. And so which is the reason Russia couldn't take it over, because Ukraine were dug in there. If you just gave it up and let Russia just move in as soon as they declare war, surprise Ukraine and declare war, move in rapidly and have military in the Donbas region, then the whole of Ukraine is just easy to take over. There's no way Ukraine could afford to give it up, especially when they have a shitty defense guarantee in conjunction with that. And so that to me is what just made it just completely and leaving everything else. Ukraine just could not agree to that. Otherwise it'd just be potentially the end of the country.
I think the other real poison pill in there is Ukrainian elections within 100 days.
Yeah.
Because anything Zelensky agrees to, he's going to be, really outflanked on the, on the right or the, nationalist. He's already in the middle of a corruption scandal. Two of his ministers were fired and, siphoning off profits from state-owned nuclear power. He, fired his general Zahulny, I think it is, last year, after he came out and sort of contradicted Zelensky in an interview with The Economist. And he's now, Zaluzhny, I think it is, he's now the ambassador in the UK, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK. So he would, and UK is very Ukrainian friendly. There's a lot of diasporas and contacts and things like that. He would be on the very nationalist side, easily able to outflank Zelensky. It's still a very poor, corrupt, country. There are a lot of problems, and an election would be a bit of a disaster because it would really open up those fissures, and that's what Russia wants. It wants they couldn't take it over. They want a non-functioning state that is just, riven with internal factions. And then obviously once you have factions, there are still lots of oligarchs and things like that, Ukrainian, but also Russian as well, that have influence. And there's obviously still some level of infiltration in the military and things like that. And it would be very easy to get a guy, and for Russia to kind of, get someone to side with, or, to help a particular candidate. As I mentioned, either way, any sort of political turmoil is just, you can just see how it would just completely rock the country.
Especially within 100 days of them signing this deal here.
Yeah.
Yes. On the Russian thing, I want to read our tweet, which I saw, which hasn't been publicized much, but I thought it was really interesting. This is from a Russian journo, Christo Grozev.
Oh no, he's Bulgarian.
Bulgarian, is he? Okay, sorry. Okay, but
he's a Bellingcat guy who's done some really fantastic investigations into the sort of Russian oligarchs and elite.
Thank you. That's why I thought it was Russian. Okay, this is one of his tweets. Thank you for correcting me. I happened to see an early version of the peace plan about 6 months ago. It was a purely Russian concept and was nearly identical to what we see today. Certainly the 50-50 Russian assets plus EU investment in Ukraine reconstruction was there. There you go, showed me. However, 2 items are glaringly missing. First, a proposal that US investors bail post-war Russia out of a pending cash and investment-strapped recession, like in the 90s, in quotes. This was meant as an inducement for Trump, whether as a legitimate US sweetener or as one for friends and family. That wasn't explicit. The second offering was a new Russia-US alliance against China. A lot of Christian alliance demagoguery was included under that item. I'm absolutely certain that this is a Russian, not a jointly developed proposal. I also cannot imagine the Russians didn't include the first of the 2 extra items. I can see, however, how that wouldn't be part of the publicly leaked plan. On item 2, can't be sure if Russia dared to include the anti-China offer. Again, if it did, it wouldn't be public. Now, those two missing elements are interesting, but I just think that what he was saying about how he basically saw this plan 6 months ago, I thought was worth sharing. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of rumours going around that it was... you can read, like, they say people are saying some of the wording is a bit odd, like it was, AI translated from Russian. My Russian isn't good enough to be able to determine that. But I mean, there is enough in this that you could see why it appeals to Trump and Witkoff, just in terms of they can't find a way through this. They're frustrated. They don't care about Ukraine. As Dave often talks about, Trump respects big players, and he's always going to have a level of reverence and respect for Putin, even when they're not getting along. And they just want this wrapped up. Okay,
let's get to the intrigue now. First of all, I'll just tell you a couple of the interesting things, and then if you want to offer your take before I read you what other people have said, that's up to you. But okay, so first thing that's worth noting. The first notable thing was that Rubio, his first reaction was, this is not an American document. He told Steve Rounds, who is a Republican, okay?
Yes.
He is his ally. A Republican, this is what they said.
Secretary Rubio did make a phone call to us this afternoon. I think he made it very clear to us that we are the recipients of a proposal that was delivered to one of our representatives. It is not our recommendation. It is not our peace plan. It is a proposal that was received, and as an intermediary, we have made arrangements to share it, and we did not release it. It was leaked. It was not released by our members or our representatives.
But then, right after Steve Rounds has said that, Rubio tweets out, the peace proposal was authored by the US. It is offered as a strong framework for ongoing negotiations. It is based on input from the Russian side, but it's also based on previous and ongoing input from Ukraine, which is very much a contradiction from what Steve Rounds said he told them behind the scenes. And I don't think Steve Rounds is lying. So Rubio seemed to change his mind quite rapidly. That was curious. He's the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor. Meanwhile, Trump told reporters only a couple of days earlier before this that he was fine with instituting the Lindsey Graham sanctions bill, which is a super, super heavy sanctions on Russia, which they've been talking about for like 6 months. And he apparently said he was fine with that at the same time as they're about to announce this super pro-Russian deal, which didn't make any sense. And at the same time, when Trump was, there was leaks that Trump was saying behind the scenes that if they didn't agree by Thanksgiving, he would not only stop selling weapons to Europe, not just to them, but to Europe. And also he wouldn't share intelligence anymore. Now, without intelligence sharing, they get bombed and they can't bomb anything. So that's a big deal. And Europe can't do that. It's America that does that. And at the same time, though, that was happening, Trump was asked if this was his final offer to Ukraine, and he just said no.
Is this your final offer to Ukraine?
No, not my final.
And the Atlantic at the same time was saying, quoted one advisor, Trump is not paying attention to the details. He's simply tired of the war, of thinking about it and being asked about it. He just wants it done, period. Meanwhile, you got J.D. Vance, who all of a sudden is part of the picture. He's on the phone negotiating with Zelensky for some reason. I don't know how that happened. I didn't think they were great mates, but apparently...
Was Zelensky wearing a suit?
Well, who knows? And at the same time, he's doing what he does best, which is tweeting abuse at people like Mitch McConnell. And his man, Dan Driscoll, the Army Secretary, who's basically one of his great mates, is out there in Europe doing the main negotiating, apparently. Not Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, but the Army Secretaries below him, which is very strange. So there's all kinds of weird shit happening here when there's just confusion all over the place. Now, I can just go straight and tell you what Axios thinks is going on. According to Axios, Witkoff and Kushner met Putin's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, for dinner in Miami back in October. Axios said that they had Trump's permission to do that and that Rubio and Vance knew all about it. Axios says they sounded Kirill Dmitriev out for Putin's demands to draw up a Gaza-like plan, like you described before. And then they met with Ukraine's national security advisor and thought that and it sounded like they might be receptive, but the Ukrainians said there was confusion. They didn't think it was actually a formal proposal. They thought they were just sending them out for talks. And so then when all of a sudden they got back that proposal, like, oh, shit. And it got sent straight to Trump, who approved it because he didn't care. And if that's the case, if that's what was going on, then Rubio's contradictions are kind of resolved because the peace proposal may be Russian in substance, which is what he originally said, but it was authored by the US in that Witkoff and Kushner were the ones who actually wrote it up and made a live diplomatic proposal out of it. So that does actually resolve those seeming contradictions. And then Vance used his friend Dan Driscoll to bring the 28-point plan to Ukraine and Europe, and then things got out of control, things got leaked, someone leaked it, moved too fast, and the Ukrainians then saw a bit of chaos and they took advantage of it, and that pissed Trump off, because he thought they were getting near a deal and he thought Ukrainians were being mischievous, and that's why the Thanksgiving deadline came from, because Trump was pissed off at Ukraine screwing him around. That's what Axios reckon. Now, I don't know, that there's a lot of that which sounds kind of fine to me, or then sounds likely. The one thing that doesn't make any sense to me at all is Rubio. Because if you think about Rubio's confusion early on, he wouldn't have committed so hard to one side and then flipped to the other side if he had any idea what was going on. And then look how frantically he's been trying to change the deal in the last week. If he was read into it the whole time, he would have been trying to change it for a month. So I just don't think he knew what was going on. I think Witkoff and Kushner probably negotiated the deal, like Axios said, and then I think J.D. Vance tried to action it through Trump before Rubio knew what was going on, because those two are rivals inside the administration, obviously both pitching for 2028. And Trump said yes because he doesn't care, and then J.D. or Kushner or someone under J.D. leaked it immediately to freeze it in place. Not Witkoff, because remember that tweet where Witkoff was confused about how it got leaked, which I showed you guys on PEP last week. And then that was what got out of control and then went on. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I read the same story as you did. And I mean, that all sounds fairly credible. I mean, yeah, I guess, and it would make sense in some ways if Rubio has been sidelined from this. First of all, he's just an old school Russia hawk. And you know, he's trying to get with the MAGA program, but leopards don't change their spots that quickly. You know, he's also very clearly just interested in the, you know, Venezuela, you know, the Latin America stuff. That's always kind of been his backyard. That's, you know, he's clearly got a lot more to do with that. He'd, you know, very happily see Cuba topple tomorrow. And yeah, he's just never really been, he kind of has to front up to these things, but it's always been pretty clear that he's sidelined on this sort of stuff. And as you said, it sort of does seem like, you know, Trump's various underlings are really jockeying for position, and if they can get this deal across the line, they make the boss look good, and the boss likes being made to look good. So this is, I think it's just so much easier to see this really as part of this vanity project for the FIFA Peace Prize, which is just insane to say, but I'm just convinced that all roads lead to that.
You're probably right. Let me now tell you the latest news and get your reaction to this. This is what just broke. Bloomberg got some transcripts of leaked calls. I don't know how they got this. I'm going to ask you about that after we go through the calls.
I have a theory.
I can't wait to hear it. The first call. This is, okay, remember October 9 was when the Gaza peace plan was signed. October 14, so 5 days after that, when it was fresh. We have a transcript of a call between Witkoff and Yuri Ushakov, who is Putin's most senior foreign policy advisor. Witkoff says, Yuri, here's what I would do. This is just a part of the phone call. My recommendation. And Yuri says, yes, please. Witkoff says, I'd make the call and this is to Trump, and just reiterate that you congratulate the president on this achievement, that you supported it, that you respect that he's a man of peace, and you're really glad to have seen it happen. So I'd say that. I'm talking about Gaza here. I think from that, it's going to be a really good call. Because let me tell you what I told the president. I told the president, the Russian Federation, has always wanted a peace deal. That's my belief. I told the president I believe that. And I believe the issue is, we have two nations that are having a hard time coming to a compromise. And when we do, we're going to have a peace deal. I'm even thinking that maybe we set like a 20-point peace proposal, just like we did in Gaza. We put a 20-point Trump plan together that was 20 points for peace. And I'm thinking maybe we do the same thing with you. Then a little later in the call, he then says, now, me to you, I know what's going to take to get a peace deal done. Donetsk and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying, instead of talking like that, let's talk more hopefully, because I think we're going to get to a deal here. And I think Yuri, the president, will give me a lot more space and discretion to get to the deal. Yuri says, I see. And Witkoff says, so if we can create that opportunity that after this, I talk to Yuri and we have a conversation, I think that could lead to big stuff. Yuri says, okay, that sounds good. Witkoff says, and here's one more thing. Zelensky's coming to the White House on Friday. Yuri says, I know that, and laughs. Witkoff, I'll go to that meeting because they want me there. But I think if possible, we have the call with your boss before that Friday meeting. Yuri, before, yeah? Witkoff, correct. Yuri, okay, I got your advice. So I discussed that with my boss and then I come back to you, okay? All right, so out of that call, we know, first of all, it was Witkoff who suggested the Donbass, not the Russians, amazingly. And secondly, if you recall, back when that meeting happened with Zelensky in the Oval Office, and then Europe came and all that kind of stuff. Do you remember there was a couple of months back? At the time, we were saying, the reason why Putin called Trump beforehand was to sabotage that Zelensky meeting. It wasn't Putin trying to sabotage the Zelensky meeting. It was Witkoff trying to sabotage the Zelensky meeting. Because for whatever reason, Witkoff loves the Russians, which is wild. That's like, we've talked about him like he's incompetent, and he is, but maybe he's also biased and incompetent.
Yeah, well, I mean, his parents are Russian emigres. Not that necessarily means anything, but maybe there's some, cultural, I don't know, stuff they pick up on, or again, I think it's just, honestly, it's just like the biggest kid in the playground.
Yeah.
And they just seem, all the people in this administration just seem to gravitate towards the biggest kid. Yeah. And I think it's that simple. And then, it's the ethos of the administration is doing deals, what's good for business, looking good, those sorts of things. And you can see from that perspective why being more aligned with Russia, or at least being more empathetic towards their aims makes sense, right?
And yeah, absolutely. And on that note, there's one more call transcript, and this time It's obviously someone that was tapping Yuri Yushikov's phone because it also involves him. This is from the 29th of October. Remember, Witkoff, Kushner and Dmitriev had their meeting in Miami between October 24 and 26. This is on the 29th of October, so straight after their meeting. And the transcript is a call between Yuri Ushakov, the foreign policy advisor for Putin, and Dmitriev, who'd just been negotiating with Witkoff. Ushakov, Yuri. Well, we need the maximum, don't you think? What do you think? Otherwise, what's the point of passing anything on? So they're talking about what demands they pass on. Dmitriev. No, look, I think we'll just make this paper from our position and I'll informally pass it along, making it clear that's all informal and let them do like they own. But I don't think they'll take exactly our version, but at least it'll be as close to it as possible, he says. Yuri says, well, that's exactly the point. They might not take and say that it was agreed with us. That's what I'm afraid of. Dmitriev says, no. I'll say it exactly as you say it word for word. Yuri says, they might twist it later, that's all. There is that risk. There is. Well, all right, never mind, we'll see. Dmitriev says, yeah, it seems to me you can talk later with Steve about this paper. That's Witkoff. We'll do everything neatly. So Dmitriev has complete confidence. He's the one who's been talking to Witkoff, that Witkoff's just going to play along and change almost nothing. And Yushakov is suspicious about Witkoff and that he thinks America might screw them over. But Dmitriev is like, no, you can trust Witkoff. He'll be fine. Yeah, and the document seems to be almost entirely Russian because Witkoff wanted it to be.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Russia has basically never really budged in their demands. So in some senses, I agree with you that he's very clearly biased, but is it also maybe just not the frustration that he's like, I'm not going to go back into the Donbass stuff because they're not going to want to give that up. Russia's budged very, very little since the start of the war in their demands. I mean, part of this just reads to me as exhaustion and frustration.
Maybe it's pragmatism,
Yeah, and just this desire to cut a deal at any cost. Because, once again, the ethos of the administration is deals. Deals are this kind of abstract, well, not abstract, they're just a good thing in and of themselves. And, Ukraine has to show willing. Russia has budged very little. They were always going to give up some amount of money. They knew that from the frozen funds. They've kind of written that off anyway. And they have very little reason to give anything up.
Okay, here's the big question, Elle. Where did these leaks come from? The people have the capacity. CIA would have the capacity. Russian intelligence would have the capacity if they want to just screw around with people. European intelligence would have the capacity. I can't think of anyone else.
Yep. I mean, Ukraine, I doubt they'd have the capacity, and I don't think it is a good look for them unless they really had someone going rogue or they really wanted to throw out the Hail Mary. I mean, it is fascinating. So my initial bet was the Europeans, just because they've leaked embarrassing stuff before. There was something from the Alaska meeting, I think in August, that came out in like the Financial Times, and it's like, well, it very clearly came from UK or EU intelligence, and they have tended to try and whenever it seems like the US is cozying up to Russia much more than Europe would like, or just once again kind of just giving in to Russian demands and just saying, right, Ukraine, take this. Europe and the UK do seem to strategically leak stuff that looks bad, and again can perhaps provide divisions in the administration between your Lindsey Grahams and Marco Rubios, who are just Russia hawks to the core, and your MAGA guys. But then it's also been provided to Bloomberg. It seems like they actually provided the audio clip. If you read it, it's not just the transcript. It's that Bloomberg transcribed it. Yeah, which is interesting. And again, Bloomberg's an American outlet. So, maybe it is more, CIA, State Department, someone who, very clearly doesn't like the deal and perhaps is interested in embarrassing a rival or a rival faction. It is very hard to say. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, like my first impulse was someone from the CIA. I thought it was American because the factional war seems to be on at the moment. That seems to be the takeaway. that people are that different that there's just complete chaos internally in the American administration. No one's controlling anyone, and so that seemed to be the most likely. But geez, I don't know. Honestly, it's an interesting one. And the fact that it's Bloomberg is a point I didn't even think of. That's a great pickup. The fact that
but then again, it's
likely.
also, if you wanted it to make it very clear that it wasn't coming from Europe, you would drop it to an American.
That's
outlet,
true.
Right?
Oh, these spies are too smart.
I know. John le Carre brain is kicking in.
Okay.
But yeah, and I mean, who knows? I mean, I think some of the, you could even say that those leaks that came in the Financial Times, I can't remember exactly what it was right now, but they kind of looked a bit like they were the, Europe and the UK kind of saying, fuck you, we can do this stuff as well. It's sort of, they weren't covering their tracks. It was very clear that it was them. And so, it just depends. Sometimes people do want to say this, that we are listening and we can fuck with you as well. Am I allowed to swear on ABC podcasts? I don't know.
You'll find out when you
put that in
back.
my contract.
You are allowed. I mean, I do it all the time. Dave, oh my God, don't even get me started on him.
Yeah, but yeah, it just really depends. Sometimes people do want to make a leak obvious that it's come from them as a sign that you still have some power. But yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a good intelligence whodunit?
Okay, final point. Rubio has clearly taken over now. He's in Geneva. He's been negotiating with Andrei Yermak, who's the number 2 guy in Ukraine. They're still at work right now. The deadline is tomorrow, but I don't think anyone's taking that deadline seriously at this point in time. The quote from Yermak is, "It's not a code red. It's more important to finalise the text." I think everyone knows that everyone's feeling good that there's progress being made. They got down to a 19-point plan, which doesn't address the NATO question or the Donbas question. They've been pushed back. Ukraine are apparently happy with it at this point in time. There's talk that Ukraine pretty much in agreement that they might have a deal. Rubio's getting excited. This is Rubio.
I think today was worthwhile. It was very, very. It is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue. Maybe in the entirety of our engagement, but certainly in a very long time. But work remains, and because this continues to be a working process, I don't want to declare victory or finality here. There's still some work to be done, but we are much further ahead today at this time than we were when we began this morning.
Europe have their own plan, but they've been ignored, so we should do that as well. Let's just ignore Europe. The important thing, though, is that Russia is not happy. Russia is not there. And press secretary for Putin, Dmitry Peskov, has said, no, we have not received any information yet. We are, of course, closely monitoring the media reports that have been pouring in over the past few days, including from Geneva. And reminded is what Putin said last week about the 28-point plan. If Kyiv doesn't want to discuss the proposals, that's fine with us, as it leads to achieving the goals of the special military operation by force. So, what do you reckon happens? Where are we at? Are we each close to a deal in Geneva or not? Do we need to send Witkoff?
The US and Russia were meeting secretly in Abu Dhabi this week. So as usual, Peskov is being he's a bomb thrower, and when he's coming out and saying that kind of stuff, it's normally he likes lobbing grenades. I mean, I just think it's going to be everyone basically agrees on, a fair core of stuff. Like Ukraine know they're going to have to give up some land. Russia's refusing to give up other things. Russia will give up some money. I just feel like they're going to make a watered down kind of peace agreement that actually doesn't get into the contentious stuff, and so that everyone can come away. It's kind of gone under the radar, but just for Ukraine getting their power back on, and Russia's still sort of doing those attacks on power systems. It's about to be dead winter in Ukraine, and it is bloody cold there. Yeah. And people are facing daily blackouts and things like that. So even if they can stop disrupting the power, get Zaporizhia or whatever back online, stop having these attacks on infrastructure, Zelensky can market that as a bit of a win, just as winter's kicking in. So I feel like it'll be something around the edges, but they still won't resolve like some of the big land disputes and things like that. What's your sense?
Look, I'm no expert on this, but I just don't think there's going to be a peace deal until Russia wants a peace deal. And Russia's not going to want a peace deal until they think they're losing. And they're not losing. And they know they're not losing, and Trump isn't making them think that they're losing. And so I think that until there's serious sanctions or serious missile sales or whatever, until Russia thinks that they've got a reason to sue for peace, I think they're just going to keep on fighting. And so I don't think there's going to be a peace deal. I think that for Russia to agree, there's going to need to be concessions from Ukraine that they're just not prepared to make. Reasonably so. So I just don't think it's going to be. I think this is going to be a false dawn. And I think Trump's going to be really annoyed, and we'll go through this cycle all over again. But we'll see. What do I know? We'll find out when I'm back in 2 months. You can laugh at me when I was totally wrong.
We'll get me back on in a couple of months, and we'll have the same discussion. We'll have our bi-monthly discussion about how it's all doomed.
Yeah. All I would say is that there is, when we come back, one thing that will have changed is Keith Kellogg won't be there anymore, who is Ukraine's biggest supporter in the administration. And so Rubio's going to be their only base of support at that point in time. If he still exists then. We'll see.
Hey, quick question.
Yeah.
Just because you watch so much footage, all the stuff I saw whenever Rubio's been in these talks recently, he looks really miserable. Or does he just look like that all the time now?
He looks pissed off a lot these days, I think. I don't think he's having a good time. I think
he needs to meet Zoran.
I was going to say, I think he needs to be reminded why it's fun as well. Back in the days when he tried being a stand-up comedian and made jokes about the size of Trump's dick, he needs to be remembered of those days. He was having a great time back then. But sadly, those days are long gone for Marco. Now we've hit the wall here, Elle, but we better get out of here. So thank you so much, though, for your. Do you have anything else to say before we leave you for part 1C of the PEPmas Giving special?
No, just thanks for all the peppers and throughout the year. My cat's broken back in again to make another. She's telling me I've got to go. But yeah, thanks as always for having me, and I can't wait to listen, especially because I am ungrateful for Bill Wyman stealing the Nuzzi and Lizza talking from underneath me, so I can't wait to hear his take on it.
Well, we are recording that tomorrow, even though the Peppers have already just heard it, because he was part 1A. So this is all very confusing. It's blown my mind, and I'm sure it'll blow yours, but you will be able to watch it in a couple of days, Elle. Thank you so much. Merry PEPmas and happy Pepsgiving.
Merry Pepsgiving.
I've absolutely no idea if we're in part 2, part 3, part 12. I don't know. I've lost track. All I know is that we are in the middle of the Festival of Pep, and we are joined by none other than the nicknames that people have been throwing around about you, Jared. I'm going to call you the Moon Man, but there's so many more. Jared Mondschein. Hi, Jared.
Hello there. Thanks so much for having me again.
Are you aware of all the nicknames that the Peppers have come up for you?
I am aware of the fact that, as I said from the beginning, no nickname ever sticks.
Yeah, well, it obviously didn't stick with me.
Exactly.
Next time I'm going to have a list. I foolishly prepared for our actual content rather than for your nickname. But so next time I'll address that.
Can't wait.
But look, I'm conscious of us trying to get as much as we can in the short time we've got. Yeah, so why don't we start with topic number 1, Jared? Trump and power. What are we talking about here?
Anyone who pays attention to the news has seen a lot of coverage of Trump losing power, right? So let's recount what we've seen over the last just month.
Yep.
We've seen the Epstein vote. We've seen Marjorie Taylor Greene go out of her way to stick her thumb in his eye.
And then be forced to resign.
Was she forced to resign? That's another debate.
That's a debate for Melina.
We've seen...
I'm talking to her about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes.
We've seen even members of Congress being brought into the Situation Room and ignoring what Trump has to say.
That's true.
We've seen the state of Indiana give a sort of bird to the Trump administration saying, we are not going to gerrymander. We've seen the Democrats overperform in the special off-year elections earlier in November. We've seen the Republicans completely ignore Donald Trump on the filibuster.
Yes.
We've seen the MAGA movement reject Trump on 50-year mortgages, H-1 B visas. We've seen Supreme Court justices asking a lot of questions about tariffs. We're still not sure where we're going to be landing on that one. And then we've also seen basically the worst polling of his administration thus far.
Yeah, some pretty bad polling.
Yeah, and so the question then is, are we at or past Trump's apex of power? I think it's really important to note polling and just where it has gone. So we all know in many ways why Trump won, more than anything else, the economy, right? And I think there's some polling that in my view indicates that if Nikki Haley had been the candidate to oppose Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, that she would have won perhaps more resoundingly than Donald Trump. Again, it's hard to know because of the way that America doesn't have compulsory voting. But you only have to look at Trump's polling on the economy in particular to see just how bad things have gotten for him in particular. So right now, 71% of all Americans say tariffs are increasing prices.
Yep.
Do you know what percentage of Republicans agree?
I think I've seen some polling on this. It's more than you would think. I'm gonna guess 45.
59.
Not bad.
That is a strong majority of Republicans saying that tariffs are increasing prices. 84% of Democrats agree. Now, what percentage of Americans say that the economy is Trump's versus Biden's? Any thoughts on that?
This is really interesting, and I don't know the exact poll that you're referring to, but I would say
CBS
I would say people generally, I would say it's over 60%.
Well done. 62% Trump.
Yeah.
32% Biden.
And the really interesting thing about this, and you might be about to say this, I hope I'm not just stealing your thunder here.
No.
But the really interesting thing about this is I saw a poll from Obama's year 7, I think it was, maybe in year 8, where a majority still blame Bush for the economy. And like Obama never, in his entire presidency, never owned the economy.
Yeah.
But Trump owned it within months. And there's an obvious reason for that. It's because the idiots took ownership of it in a really big way with all the tariffs. Like, he claimed it. He wrestled ownership of the economy when he could have sat there blaming Biden for as long as he liked, which you would have thought would be a Trump special. He loves blaming other people for his problems. But he just didn't think it through, and I think now he regrets it.
And also, I don't know how much that's unique to Trump. We had Joe Biden owning Bidenomics, saying, but I'm actually in favor of Bidenomics. Even his vice president talked about Bidenomics. And it was just like, what numbers are you looking at in terms of voter sentiment that makes you want to own this economy?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of think pieces out there about Trump's being past his apex. And I think it makes a good argument. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Just the way that even Republicans are saying that things are not looking good, and the way that Democrats overperformed in the special election, and all the other reasons that I've highlighted, and even more. But I think there still is a positive story for Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So right now, those who say that the direction of the country is heading in the right one, it's higher than at any point in Biden's term beyond July 2021. So it's still higher.
The right direction. Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't be high numbers, but higher than Biden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We haven't hit the lowest yet.
That's interesting.
Now, also, any guesses what is the lowest ever Republican approval rating of Donald Trump since 2016?
This is what poll is this?
So there's a few different polls. Gallup I look at, but then Reuters also had one that was did polling on this when Trump was not in office.
Okay. So since when?
Since 2016.
Okay, I would say the lowest would be after January 6th, and that would be at 76%.
So Gallup had after January 6th, I should clarify, I think it was like January 4 to like 15, but a good amount after January 6th, 82%.
Wow.
82% GOP approval for Donald Trump, largely after January 6th. Yeah. Now, you forget, what is what's been the nadir of of Trump's time in the last decade, the lowest he's ever been.
Well, the lowest he's ever been would be at the beginning of the decade, like where he started, and then he went up, didn't he?
2022.
Oh yeah, is that lower than? Is that lower than 2015?
That was the future. Remember, it wasn't Ron DeSantis.
No, I remember.
The future.
I remember the future. Yeah.
Like for me, the number one tell of Trump's power is where the Republicans are on him more than anything else.
Yeah, sure.
Reuters had a poll in late 2022 after all of Trump's endorsed candidates lost, or almost all of them, most of them, and it was 70% of Republicans approved of Donald Trump in 2022.
Wow.
Now, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Like, the reason why Trump won the 2024 GOP nomination was not because elites like Donald Trump. I think the Epstein vote was a symptom. It's not this Epstein vote that caused people to turn on Trump. It's everything else, and Epstein is a symptom of their turning. The GOP is the elite, in my view, still hate Trump in the way that they hated him in 2016. They're just afraid of him more than anything else. If you talk to these elite who are their heroes, none of them actually say Trump is my hero. They're like impressed and marveled at what he's been able to accomplish. But they talk about like Ronald Reagan. You know, even guys who are young, they talk about not Trump, right? King Cyrus was not someone that we model our behavior after. He's sort of a means to an end type of guy, right?
Yeah, and America obviously is driven by negative partisanship as much as anything. Yeah, hating the other team. Yeah.
So then why I think Trump still has some juice left is Reuters now has their polling on GOP support of Donald Trump has Trump down to 82% from 87% the month prior. So we're still not even close from where Trump was in 2022, late 2022. And I think you add that, one, the GOP has not really fallen off for him, the GOP rank and file. But two, he has had his political obituary written more times than I can count.
Yes.
And he has always come back.
Yeah.
There's a long time for him to still be in office. Again, we're not in a parliamentary system where anyone can just like call him and his party turfs him or whatever. He's going to be there for a while. So I don't think that his approval rating, outside of a major 9/11 style event, I can't see his approval rating ever getting beyond 50%. But I do think that I would urge caution for anyone who thinks that his popularity is gone forever.
Okay, I'd say a few things. The first of which is when we're talking about him being past his apex, you go, yeah, sure. And Taylor Swift is past her apex. She's still pretty bloody high. Yeah, like he still packs a punch in the Republican Party in particular.
Yeah.
So he's not like helpless, just struggling, with floaties in a pool going, help me. It's not like that, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, I totally agree. He's certainly not done yet. I mean, my personal view is he will be done after the midterms. But that's a year away. Yeah. There's going to be ups and downs up to that. And at the moment, he's had a bad month. That's true. And these things do tend to build on themselves. Like there's a sort of momentum to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, there might be more. But there'll be a break. There'll be a break at some point in time. And he'll certainly be looking forward to that break, whenever that may be. I'll say one thing, though. I mean, I think you made a good case. But I think comparing him to 2022, not the greatest comparison, because he's never going to be on the nose when he's in power, like he will be when he's out of power. Because you can't, especially as a Republican,
people are rusted on.
Yeah, and also nothing hurts your approval more than being a loser.
Yeah,
2022, he's a loser.
Yeah.
Like he's at that point in time, there's all kinds of question marks about whether he even wants to come back, let alone can come back.
Yeah.
He's never, when he's president, going to be lower than 2022. So if you look at that number, that 70 number in 2022, you go, okay, the presidential equivalent of that might be 76 or 77 or whatever. It's just not going to be possible while he holds the office of president for him to be as much of a loser as he was in 2022.
Yeah.
As far as Republicans go, and it's just he's especially given he likes to use his power. He's not like George W. Bush, who spent the last 2 years of his presidency just going, hey, with a big kick me signs back, going, like me, please. Like, he's just not going to do that. He's not going to do it. He's not going to be a pathetic little puppy.
For those who were not alive for that time, I will clarify what
that was a great impression of George W. Bush.
Well, no, I was just going to say, what that actually looked like on the ground was that he basically empowered as many cabinet secretaries as possible to do a lot of the work. So the face of the sort of responding to the financial crisis was not George W. Bush. It was Hank Paulson.
Yeah.
So that's what you mean by
George
that.
W. Bush just disappeared for the last few years.
He was so unpopular.
Yeah, he was very unpopular, and he just gave up. He's waved the white flag, and he's went and played golf or painted or whatever the hell he did.
I think that was post-presidential.
Yeah, sure. And he didn't argue the toss.
Yeah.
Trump, right to the last day, is going to go down swinging. We all know that.
Yeah.
And at the very least, and that's going to make a lot of people hate him more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to mean that Republicans aren't going to 100% be sure they can just desert him like they will be sure after he's no longer president. And 2022, some of them thought that had already come.
Yeah, no, they really did.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily make that comparison to, or I wouldn't take that away to the bank, but I take your point. And I actually agree with what you're saying, that I think he's definitely past his apex. God, you couldn't be any higher than he was a couple of months ago when the Democrats were literally just giving up. They were just kicking around the dirt, going, oh, we're screwed. There's just nothing we can do. All our representatives are awful. Everything's the worst.
Yeah.
And I was, at the time, I remember I was doing PEPs where I was being relatively negative, but staying like Pollyanna compared to the actual Democrats themselves.
Yeah.
Just because I was saying, just wait, give it a couple of years. We're in the same position as Obama was, and the Republicans. How many times did I say that? We're like the Republicans were at the beginning of 2009 when they were hopeless.
Yeah.
That's where we were. The worm turns. So he's never going to be higher than that.
Yeah.
But he's still got some juice, I agree.
But it was still surprising how he actually came to his second term of office more popular than he ever was in his first term.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have thought that. I mean, what's remarkable to me is I actually found some polling that both Democrats and Republicans are now more confident than about Trump's decision-making regarding nuclear weapons now than they were in September and October 2016. They're more confident.
Honestly, I actually, you might find this ridiculous. I think that's a rational point of view.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I remember back in 2016, people were scared that he was just going to start a war.
Yeah.
And, to his credit, that's one thing he isn't so keen on. Well, I say, as they camp outside Venezuela. But once again, that's one for Melina. That's going to be a juicy hour, the Melina hour. But anyway, but back in 2016, people thought he was just a completely radical, chaotic element, and while he is, not in the way that they suspected. I think it's reasonable for people to trust him more with nuclear weapons now, after 5 years of him not starting a nuclear war.
Yeah.
Than in the middle of the North Korea period. It's when I think people were concerned.
Yeah, and how quickly that has vanished from our memories.
Yeah, well, not mine, but a lot of people's. You're right. No, that's. I think that's fair enough. That's a good start, Jared. But let's roll on. It is time.
This is not normal.
I've been hanging the pipe. Play that. I'm a bit addicted to this thing. I'm going to start off with something new. Our first ever. This is just for you, Jared, because I know you like these. Our first ever This Is Not Normal poll. A poll for you, Jared. It's from a month ago, admittedly. It's just been seeing my notes for the right moment. The right moment has arrived.
I'm honored.
I don't think these numbers have improved since then. But this is the kind of thing, this is the kind of thing we've seen a lot of, but we just can't take it for granted. Jared, I want us to not take this for granted. That's what not normal is about. Let's just stop and imagine if we read the same thing about Obama or about Jimmy Carter or about just someone else. PRRI. Given two options.
Was it a polling firm?
What's that?
PRRI, the polling firm.
Yeah, polling firm. Yes. Given two options. President Trump is a dangerous dictator whose power should be limited before he destroys American democracy.
Okay.
And President Trump is a strong leader who should be given the power he needs to restore America's greatness. It's like a month ago, right? It was before the shutdown, actually. The dictator option got 56%.
Is over 1,000 Americans?
I don't have the number in front of me, but
Okay,
it's PRI. They're a good firm.
Yeah.
They usually do quite big polls, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. And that was up from 52% in March, compared to 41% who picked the strong leader option. Most Democrats, obviously, 91% Democrats picked the dictator option. 65% of independents picked the dictator version.
Yep.
65% of independents said that President Trump is a dangerous dictator whose power should be limited before he destroys American democracy. Just think about that wording. Like, that's incredible. A comfortable majority. Not just a majority, a comfortable majority. Almost a supermajority of independents believe that he is in danger of destroying American democracy with his dictatorial ways.
Yeah.
And a majority of the country. Yeah, to me, that is worth dwelling on rather than just seeing for a moment a line in some article and just moving on. That is, we've never seen anything like that. I hope we never do again. But that is not normal. That's not normal. Jared, sorry, you can talk. You can talk over it.
No, it's not. It's not normal. It's not whatsoever. And the question is, I think the Democrats are finally finding what energizes them, because the question is, what motivates them to do something about it?
Yeah.
And motivating them to do something about it is not calling him a dictator. It's not saying that he's eroding our democracy. It seems to be the number one motivator is life isn't affordable for you anymore.
It does seem that way.
And there's this going back to 2022. There's a lot of consternation, like who is going to win this election, because affordability was not great in 2022.
No.
And the Democrats overperformed in 2022. Now, what were the ingredients to that overperformance? One, the GOP didn't have great candidates. And two, the Democrats now consistently overperform in midterms.
Also, one other thing, I think it's been established a fair few times, much to the Democrats' disappointment in other times, that it takes a while for the economy to filter through to people's opinions.
Yeah.
Like Bill Clinton spent almost his entire presidency waiting for people to approve of his economic handling.
Yeah.
And then it stuck afterwards.
Yeah.
Obama, once again, took a very long time before people had anything positive to say about Obama's turnaround. I know it wasn't a huge turnaround, but it was better than the numbers he was getting.
Yeah.
It takes a while. It takes a couple of years for it to stick. So 2022, yeah, you're right. Height of inflation.
Yep.
That's 9% inflation time, right?
Yeah.
But it probably didn't filter through until about 2023 or 2024. Oh my God, this is shit to the American people.
And consumer sentiment tracks that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It continues to deteriorate.
So they probably stole the 2022 midterms a little bit because of that. They hadn't filtered through at that point in time.
Yeah.
And then 2024 is the other way around. Things were improving, but they got busted with the bill for 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's the beginning of not normal, but there's more. I want to talk about presses. There's two things I want to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is Trump's presses. Okay, his press conferences have never been very normal, Jared. But lately they've really been not normal. For example, spraying the Syrian president with Trump's perfume. Let's have a look at this. This is not normal, Jared.
Men's fragrance. Yeah. This is it's the best fragrance. Come here, thanks. I have more here, sir. Okay. So what we'll do is just take that, Joe, put it in, and then the other one is for your wife. How many wives? You guys had never know.
I wish they did those record scratches, and like you're must wondering how I ended up here, because they start with him when he was in ISIS, and then taking perfume from Trump.
Yes. So, and this is what they're doing in front of reporters. I agree with you. That should be in a time capsule. That's an all-timer, I feel. Like, we just go past, we're just used to this shit. He assaulted the Syrian president with his shitty perfume twice. He literally made an ad for his perfume. He told him to take the perfume home with him. That guy, of all people. And that perfume's a weapon. You couldn't get that on a plane. If you did, you'd end up in jail. And then he caps it all off. Let's not just drive past the bit where he joked about whether the Syrian president has multiple wives. Let's remember that as well. That's not normal to Jared. But this is just the beginning. Because, look, there have been other health concerns. Sorry, did you want to say something about that before I move on? There have been other health concerns with the president recently. You get that when you're 79. We talk about this a bit. I always say, with Biden, I thought you needed a pretty high bar to pull that chain, because it's one thing to not be at your best. Trump's not at his best. Biden sure as hell wasn't at his best. It's another thing to not actually even meet the bar of being functional as a president. That's a very different thing altogether. So I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. That goes for Trump as well as Biden, from me. The New York Times ran a story this week noting that Trump starts each day's events on average at 12:08 p.m. this year, compared to 10:31 a.m. during his first term.
Yep.
And he's held 1,029 events this year so far, 39% fewer than the 1,688 events at the same time in 2017. Yeah, sure, he's degrading. But is he degrading to the point of non-functionality? I would argue not. But, make your case if you want to make your case. I should be fair. Here. I should give Trump the other side, because Trump did rebut those allegations. He did point out that the reporter is very ugly in his view. So we do need to note that defense. he truthed that out. That's of course, that's not a sign of his degrading mentality. But anyway, look, Trump's presses on health have been very interesting. When we're talking about presses not being normal. Because there was one about a week ago where it came out that he was talking about his health checks. And he just said out of nowhere that he had an MRI. And people were like, huh? Because for those who don't know, like Trump, apparently, he's a pepper. You should pay attention, Trump. He didn't realize that you don't get an MRI unless your doctor suspects something could be very wrong. Yeah. Because, that's radiation that you don't need. Yeah. They don't like subjecting you to too many MRIs. I know he's old, but still. Yeah, and so the fact that he got an MRI meant that his doctor was suspecting him of having the presence of something that you could see on an MRI. And anything you can see on an MRI, you don't want to see. As a general rule of thumb, right? Okay, so the journos ask him, why did you get that MRI that you just mentioned? And he tried to pretend it was part of his checkup. Have a look.
Mr. President, could you tell us why you needed to get an MRI? I understand that the results were good, but what was it for?
Because it's part of my physical. Getting an MRI is very standard. Well, you think I shouldn't have it? Other people get it.
Typically, an MRI
I had an MRI.
Part of your body.
Here's what the story is. I had an MRI. The doctor said it was the best result he has ever seen as a doctor. That's it. But I had an MRI as part of my standard yearly, or I think they do it every 2 years, but I have the physical every year, and the result was outstanding.
Was it your brain?
Did you know? I have no idea what they analyzed, but whatever they analyzed it well, and they said that I had as good a result as they've ever seen.
It's the best result his doctor has ever seen on an MRI, Jared.
Why didn't they do a follow-up for, is this your first MRI? Sometimes, the journalists miss the follow-up, and it's a bit frustrating.
That's a good point. You should have been there. But I mean, they got something, which is that Trump doesn't know what an MRI is. He seems to think it's an IQ test for your body. But to be clear, if you're getting tested for, say, cancer with an MRI, you either have it or you don't. You don't have the best the doctor has ever seen is probably tied with every other person who didn't have cancer. Just can't get better than that. Not having the thing they're looking for, right? So it's quite a competitive battle for first. There are a lot of people tied, but that's the standard of health transparency that we're talking here with Trump's presses. He's just clearly making shit up, and the only way they get the hint that there's something else there is when he accidentally reveals how little he understands his own situation. He lies in such an obvious way, it's almost an insult. So there's that as well with the presses. That's also... yeah, wherever the part of his body is that they're testing could actually sound like that. Anyway, but the bit I really want to focus on, Jared, is media intimidation, because that is getting out of control. And I would love your views on this. Like, he's been getting pissed off a lot lately, and in particular around the Epstein stuff.
Yeah.
So when people asked him some tough Epstein questions on, for instance, on a plane, Catherine Lucy asked him an Epstein question from Bloomberg, and this is what he said.
Sir, if there's nothing incriminating in the file, sir, why not Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings.
So just to be clear, quite piggy is what he was saying to the woman who actually started speaking first and was then interrupted by someone else who wanted to ask about something other than Epstein. So, look, not that I'd ever justify saying quite piggy, but what I'm saying is, even in this bizarro world where quite piggy was an acceptable thing to say to someone interrupting, this person wasn't interrupting. So that was, I felt, noteworthy. And he went on with her later, by the way. There was more. Yeah. In this case, she was talking about Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. He didn't want to answer that one either. Have a look at this.
I did an interview with him. We had 300 million hits. You know that. Look, I can't tell him. Will you let me finish my statement? You are the worst. You're with Bloomberg, right? You are the worst. I don't know why they even have you.
To be fair, he didn't call it piggy then. So that was a real improvement. That was very polite.
I will say that the one thing that is notable from my perspective is at least just how much he engages with the press.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing that I appreciate, at least, is that he will, for this year, he's tracking for around 13 press conferences and 330 press engagements altogether. And that's more than double Biden in 2021 and triple Biden in 2024.
I can't believe that Biden had only had as much as a third of the engagements that Trump had.
98.
If you were asking me to guess, I would have guessed a tenth.
Yeah. So, and again, it's because he needs that media engagement that we find out things like the MRI. Where we gain a lot more insight into who he is, because he just can't stop talking to the media. I mean, if you watch any of the full videos, we're so used to seeing the clips, but if you watch any of the full videos of him with different heads of states sitting around the table or at the cabinet meetings, a lot of the times it almost feels like they're running out of questions. He does press availability for so long that the questions start deteriorating. He's like, all right, let's just call it. It's getting boring now. And so it is one thing that I think I would be shocked if his successor does in terms of having that level of press availability.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. And I do appreciate, and I do think, I'm glad you said that. I do think we should give credit to the fact that he at least does engage with the press on some level. But I want to talk about that level, Jared.
It's great. Yeah.
because while the existence of speaking to the press is a very good thing, admittedly, increasing numbers of that press are bloggers and tweeters, but still. But no, look, Bloomberg, ABC News is the next one.
Yeah.
There's still real reporters there. I feel like we're getting to a whole new level when we're starting to threaten the licenses of the owners of the reporters, and that's where we got during the MBS press conference. One of the reporters, Mary Bruce from ABC News, asked a question about Khashoggi. It's a tough question.
Yep.
And Trump clearly didn't like it. That's when he gave his famous answer about Khashoggi basically had it coming, saying he didn't even say his name. That person was controversial.
Yeah.
It was controversial and not everyone liked him.
Yeah.
I imagine the people who chopped him up didn't like him. That's a start. But he obviously was fuming about that question.
Yep.
Because it looked bad in front of his new friend. And she came back for another question. Once again about Epstein. Doesn't like those questions. And this is when Trump lashed out a little bit. Let's have a look.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. You're going to psych. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me. But he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's, your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question.
It's amazing how he gets really wedded to some things, like ideas and facts. That 97%, that's stuck with him for a long time. I'd love to know who said 97%.
There was a media research center, they're like the right-wing Media Matters, that ran a report after one election where they just surveyed like a couple of weeks of news coverage. They didn't have 97%.
No, that's what I'm saying.
They had like 93% or 91% or something, whatever. It wasn't 97%. And when he was relating it, he just made up the number 97 and he's just kept it ever since. Yeah.
Do you think he sticks with 97 because 98% would be unbelievable?
I think it's Chain to Saddam Hussein about what's a credible number to run with. And that's what he came up with. A few things I find interesting here, which I'm going to get your comment on, Jared, in a second.
Mm-hmm.
So entitled. He really does think he's king in this clip. He even used the word insubordinate to describe a question from a reporter, as if he owns them. It also shows why ABC, like I said at the time, by the way, shouldn't have bothered paying Trump off for that dodgy lawsuit last year, that $16 million settlement.
As soon as you capitulate, he wants more.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it wins you a day apiece, maybe. It was never going to work in the long run. Also interesting for me was how he explicitly threatened their license by subtweeting the FCC commissioner there, going, hey, FCC commissioner, Brennan Carr, pay attention to this. Here we go, get them. Because we know Brennan Carr will be happy to act on his threats. He's already demonstrated that with the Jimmy Kimmel situation. In fact, just this week, so last week actually it was now, Trump showed how much of a threat Brendan Carr is to free speech when Seth Meyers said that Trump was the most unpopular president of all time, and Trump tweeted out this. NBC's Seth Meyers is suffering from an incurable case of Trump derangement syndrome. He was viewed last night in an uncontrollable rage, likely due to the fact that his show, inverted commas, like it's not a show, is a ratings disaster. Aside from everything else, Myers has no talent and NBC should fire him immediately. And then what happened? Brendan Carr the head of the FCC retweeted that tweet.
That truth.
That truth, sorry, yes. Without any comment. He just retruthed it, which is classic Brendan Carr. I really don't like this guy. Not only does he have a track record of trying to get late night hosts sacked,
Yeah.
but the owner of NBC Comcast is trying to acquire a piece of Warner Brothers Discovery at the moment that will require Carr's approval. He knows it. They know it. He knows they'll see that retweet.
Mm-hmm.
Not a word. No threats. No big talk. No, like nothing. It's all deniable. It's just, I just thought it was interesting. Just to retweet that. Don't tell me they didn't notice that and they're not worried about Seth Meyers now.
Yeah.
They would have got the message. Quietly retweeting that tweet makes his point loud and clear. I hate how effective Brendan Carr is. We were talking about this on text the other night. I was saying I think Brendan Carr is he's
Brendan Carr and Stephen Miller, the most effective of Trump's acolytes.
I think they are. Brendan Carr's and Brendan Carr is that rare individual who's very competent, very loyal, and doesn't care how much damage he does. He's a literal triple threat. Anyway, and my point is the FCC running a reign of terror through Trump's press conferences is. And we just take it for granted, Jared. We just take it for granted. It's just part of American governments at the moment, but it shouldn't be. That is scary shit if for a country that supposedly treasures free speech as part of its very identity. Got any thoughts?
Yeah, this can't last. It's just that sort of approach, that aggressive behavior by the FCC. It's untenable in the long run. And so again, we've talked about this before, but thinking about what comes after Trump, I can't imagine the FCC retaining this power for 10 years from now. It's just no one. Again, I've said before. I would just said now how the Republican elite don't like Donald Trump. I don't think anyone wants the FCC to have this power again. In terms of this level of coercion over media organizations, and so I have to wonder, what does that look like? What does a post-Trump FCC look like, and what are the policies that engender a more sustainable political environment?
That's very reasonable. This is why the Peppers love you, Jared. Reasonable Jared. Let me ask you a question.
So here's, just to get on that. A lot of people really get frustrated with me that I'm not outraged all the time. My friend,
dude,
you're not. You're as twinsies, you're not. But like, again, my whole thing, what I do at work is I do policy, right? I try to find out policy. I try to think about what are some actual solutions here. Like, it feels good to say, this guy sucks. This is the worst ever. We're just like, what do you want to do about it? Do you just want to sit here? It feels good to say this sucks and this guy is the worst ever. But what are your tangible solutions? What's your pathway forward? Like, just saying, it reminds me, the line I was talking about is from The Big Lebowski. You remember when I'm not sure how familiar you are. It's been a little while since that came out, but he was insulting another character, and a third character was like, "Look, you're not wrong. You're just an asshole." That's my line. When people just start like getting angry, like, you're not wrong to be angry about things, but like, what do you want to do about it? What are some pathways forward here? And just articulating all the ways things are terrible, that's a great first step, but that should not be the only step.
I couldn't agree more. Again, reasonable Jared. I couldn't agree more, 100%. But I actually, that's not true. I can agree more because there's one thing I am going to dispute.
Great.
Or clarify. And that is, it does make you feel better for a day, for a minute, for a second, but then it makes you feel worse. That's the thing. Wallowing in the mire that everything is shit is great for the exact moment that you're wallowing.
Yeah.
But then after you've finished the initial wallow, you just go, I just feel like shit now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's how you get into a funk.
100%. I couldn't agree more. This is like psychology 101 as well. You want to focus on your agency.
Yeah.
What agency do we have to change this? And it's not a coincidence that I'm always talking about Australian agency in my work, because I really do think Australia, Japan, and other U.S. allies and partners have more agency than ever in this administration. Because in many ways you could say that there's a vacuum, right? Like the Trump administration is just not doing much in a number of areas, and that leaves a vacuum for key allies and partners to think about what do they want to fill it with. And again, it's so easy to just sit on your hands and say everything sucks.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to not get criticized either if you don't take that step. And this is, I was texting you about this, but now as an official Australian, now that I have received my citizenship and passport and everything, I can say that one thing I hate about our culture
yes.
is that tall poppy syndrome of just like, no, I'm not going to try anything because I don't want to be shot down, right?
Yeah.
It's just like that. I love the sort of maybe I don't know Australian culture well enough, but that larrikin spirit of just trying, like, yeah, let's just try it. Let's just like that can-do attitude. Like, I really don't like when people just want to complain incessantly. As a fourth-generation New Yorker, I can complain like the best of them. But at a certain point, you want to try something and think about what you can do about it.
There's something you need to know about your country, Jared. Can-do attitude has never been associated with your country. It's been associated with your old country, but not with your new country. No one's ever said Australia is the place for the can-do attitude. Australia's the place of who gives a shit.
She'll be right.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Well, I'm hoping that my old and new countries can maybe take the best from each other.
Yeah,
and
that would be nice.
Yeah, have a nicer and more boring political environment in America. I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
And having more entrepreneurial spirits in Australia wouldn't hurt either.
That'd be wonderful. I completely agree. Again, very reasonable, Jared.
That's my new nickname.
That's right. No, I just said, just say, look, let's just, like, why I implore the Peppers and everyone and the entire world that listens to Pep is just use the primal part of your brain just a little less and the executive functions in your brain just a little bit more, and you'll be happier. That's all I'm saying. And you got them. Use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one more thing I'll just add in terms of me not showing my partisan bias, like, because I honestly think as someone who does policy, I work with all, like, left, right, center, everything in the U.S. and Australia, Trump, Biden, Obama, Bush, ScoMo, Albo, you name it. Sure. I work with alums of all these organizations or these governments. And I honestly think, as someone who works with all of them, it doesn't help, one, to be partisan, to say, I hate this or these guys are terrible. Two, I think it makes analysis more interesting if you don't know who they voted for. If you just say, I hate X, every time you read it, you're like, oh, this guy hates X. Of course. I should, we can't use X anymore.
No, I know.
I have to say X, Y, Z.
As a little, sorry, I don't want to derail your point. You finish your point, and then I'll derail.
No, that's it. I just think it's more compelling when you don't know what someone's going to say before they say it.
Okay, yes. Okay, so the potential derailing was that back in 2022, we all mocked. When I say we, I mean me and Dr. Dave, mocked relentlessly how bad a rebranding of Twitter X was, right? At the time, we had a lot of fun about that. And this is just so bad. For all his strengths and abilities, Elon Musk is not a branding guy. Even in my worst nightmares for the future of his company and branding, did I dream that nearly 4 years later, after that rebranding, when people wrote about his company in newspapers, they would write X, formerly known as Twitter. 3.5 years later, they're still doing it. I saw it yesterday. I don't remember the publication, but New York Times. It was one of them. X, formerly known as Twitter. How bad a branding exercise is that? That 4 years later, they still need to specify what it used to be called because your branding is that bad.
Completely right.
Oh, my God. Hopeless. Okay.
And he's obsessed with it as well. He wants everything to be on X.com.
Yeah, I know. Well, just imagine how many brackets there will be in articles in the New York Times in the future. Let me ask you very quickly. I mean, we just don't have enough time. Oh, my God.
Sorry, I had a bit of a rant.
No. This is good. This is good stuff. The peppers, okay. That's just a very reasonable rant from Jared.
Reasonable rant from reasonable Jared.
Yes. Let me put this to you. The press.
Yeah.
Should they just boycott him? Should they just go, apologize, or we're just not going to turn up? Because
apologize to the reporter, or
to the reporter, to Quiet Piggy, or whoever he's threatening. Like, just draw a line. I think Quiet Piggy's a damn good line.
Yeah.
Just go, no. Until you apologize for that, which you'll never do, you're never going to see any of us again. Just talk to Benny Johnson. Talk to your conservative tweeters. Because, people go, and I'm one of them. I'm just being devil's advocate here a bit. I'm one of them who says, the press need him a lot. But, he doesn't politically need the press as much as other presidents would have in the past.
Yeah.
But emotionally, I think he needs the press.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I think he needs them a lot. And I don't think he'd like it very much if all the people he wants to dominate and all the people that he wants to lord over are ignoring him. I think he's a person who would react very badly to being ignored. So I just wonder if that might be a potential tactic.
I'd love to know what the White House Correspondents Association said about that, if they said anything at all. I haven't looked this up, but the only thing I know about them is they have fought against administrations, both Democrat and Republican alike. But I'd love to know if and when they have called out presidents for their behavior. The number one thing that they have complained about in the past is media availability. And so I think in this administration, they've called out losing seats, and that's been part of the culture wars. But other than that, I don't know if the sort of rhetoric that the president has used in this term, whether they've done that. I believe they did come out with a statement when he called the media the enemy of the people on Twitter. In the first term, those early days.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
They needed that not normal sting back then.
Yeah.
While you're running hot, you wanted to say something about migrant crime? Tell us about migrant crime.
Yeah, this is something that, it made news here because the State Department now, undergoing its sort of MAGA change, has now completely changed the way that it does its congressionally mandated human rights reports. So every year they come out with, Congress mandates it, these country reports on human rights practices around the world. They've done this since the 70s. I think they've just released their 48th in August. The 48th one, they omitted a lot of the things that we sort of took for granted. That we even continue seeing in the first Trump term, including comments on restrictions on freedom of peaceful assembly and association, corruption in government, election abuses, protections for minorities and other vulnerable groups omitted from this year's report. But now what came out this month in November was a directive, a cable and this got reported in UK, Kiwi, Australian media, and I think Canada as well, that they were going to now, in addition to exclude sections that they had covered in the past, to actually look at the level of crimes committed by migrants in these countries. So it was asking U.S. diplomats in, for example, Australia, to look at to report on the crime statistics in Australia committed by migrants. Now, we all know the stats on migrants in terms of how, at least in America, illegal immigrants, their incarceration rate is about half that of native-born, and illegal immigrants generally, no study that I found commit violent crimes more than native-born Americans. And with that all said, I think there's been a lot of reporting on this directive. It was a cable, and it was a cable from D.C. to these embassies, largely in the developed world. And I think, rightfully, a lot of media organizations say, isn't this infringing on the sovereignty of these countries to be reporting on this stuff? But actually, the Human Rights Report itself, which got started in the 1970s, remember Carter era, which famously focused on human rights for the first time in American foreign policy history to that extent, it already was hated by a lot of countries, especially developing countries. But now this is something that really will anger and frustrate, I think, not only the countries, but the foreign service officers and the U.S. diplomats.
Of course. Yeah.
Because I think this really goes against every U.S. diplomat that I've talked to, something that they would be very keen to tackle themselves.
I'll tell you my first reaction to this is, and this is why I'm sort of looking quizzical and sort of narrowing my eyes as I've been thinking about this, just thinking, hang on, do they realize that all these foreign countries, like when they talk about migrant crime, they're talking about Americans? What happened? Like, how does that help America? I thought it was America first. Like, isn't it good for Americans to be able to go overseas at will? And to, like if they achieved their aim of poisoning immigration to all these foreign countries, that only hurts America.
Yeah.
So is it America first or is it nativists first? Because that seems a bit more like the latter to me.
I mean, this is the nationalist agenda. I mean, what you're saying makes sense. Until I got my citizenship last week, if I decided to go on a bender and start assaulting people, that would be a migrant crime in Australia.
That's right.
But no, this is the nationalist agenda.
Which you wouldn't, because you're very reasonable.
Yeah. And the fact that the State Department is doing this, though, I think the interesting dynamic that I want to see is how these reports look in countries in which we have a political appointee. The U.S. has a political appointee as the ambassador, and where is a U.S. diplomat? Because I think this is going to get to the tension between political appointees and the rank and file, where they're like, we don't want to report on this. This is really frustrating to have to do.
Can I also make the point, and this is something that you'll probably appreciate, because you're into stats like me. Just from a stats point of view, other countries don't have crime rates like America does. And what, like, presumably this is not going to be an issue for, I don't know, Namibia or whatever, some place with not particularly low crime rates.
Yeah.
They're talking about, European countries and places like that which have a fraction of the crime of America, which means one migrant crime, two migrant crimes as a percentage is worth a lot more.
But we've learned that quant means nothing to this administration. It's all qual, right?
Yeah,
so it's not the number. It is actually the egregious story, as we saw in the UK, when it is migrant crime or supposed migrant crime. That is where you get the most, the quick and passionate rhetoric. And as we've seen in the alleged migrant crime committed against the National Guard in D.C.
Yeah. That's true, yeah. Like it just like seconds later, it's just okay. Let's account for every migrant because one murder means they're all murderers. Yeah, he didn't say that obviously, but that's the implication.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, that gets us down. Let's get us back up. I'll tell you what gets back up, Jared. The second part of this is not normal. This is about. A great friend of the pods, Mike Flynn. We haven't talked about him so much recently, but when we first started, boy, we talked a lot about Mike Flynn. He was the Ed Martin Jr. of the first few eps. There's a lot of Mike Flynn talk early on, and Michael Flynn, he was Trump's crackpot national security advisor for like 2 weeks when he first started.
It was almost a month.
So, I mean, after he became president.
Yeah, he lasted almost a month.
Really?
Yeah, it was like 32 days, 28 days.
He lasted to the end of February? I'd be shocked by that. Lucky, we're going to need a fact check on this one. Like, I know he was appointed by Trump back in December before he became president. But, I find it hard to believe he lasted to the end of February. For those who don't remember, he was forced to step down after it came out he'd been conducting behind-the-scenes secret chats with his Russian counterpart during the transition. 22 days. There we go. Halfway
3
between.
weeks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Thank you. With his Russian counterpart during the transition, and he lied about it. He lied about it to the FBI.
Yeah.
Don't lie to those guys.
Especially an FBI run by Jim Comey at the time.
Yeah, and especially when it's just so anti-Trump and unfair and biased and weaponized. Oh my God. I'd never heard the word weaponized ever in my life until about 2018. And I've just never stopped hearing the word weaponized ever since. Anyway, and then he was charged with knowingly and willfully making materially false statements to the FBI regarding his conversations with Russian diplomats, which in itself is not normal, but that's not what I'm talking about. On the same day he was charged, he signed a plea agreement in which he agreed to plead guilty to the charge to that offence and also admit to the factual basis of the charge. He admitted to all this. Right? He admitted it. Under penalty of perjury, he admitted it. Right? And to be clear, that plea deal also involved the government not charging him for a bunch of other dodgy shit he'd been doing, because he was an interesting character, Michael Flynn. Obama specifically warned the Trump administration about Michael Flynn because he was in the Obama administration originally, amazingly. Anyway,
he was basically respected in many ways in the intel community in the Obama administration as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Yeah.
Like, I know people, like normal people, who are just like shocked at his turn in the Trump administration because he was respected. And it's shocking how quickly he changed.
But one of the things that wasn't respected was when he failed to register as a foreign agent while being on the payroll of a businessman with close ties to the Turkish government, while recommending to Trump as his incoming national security advisor that they should kidnap a pro-democracy Turkish dissident living in America and extradite him to Turkey for punishment while he's on the payroll of this dude. That is shady behavior. Funny he doesn't mention that these days, but that was part of his plea deal, right? To just let that go away. Anyway, he then testified in court that he was pleading guilty to these charges. His sentencing was delayed while he cooperated with the government inquiry into Russiagate. But then he changed his mind. Things changed over time. We all got used to what was going on. Things became normal. And by January 2020, he decided to file a motion to dismiss the case instead. He changed his mind. And the US attorney also argued the charges should be dropped because he said Flynn's lies, they were small, they were immaterial. He forgot about the Turkish thing as well. But just focused on the FBI lies. He said, who cares? The FBI knew he was lying. It didn't really matter. There's no damage done. Whatever. Let's just let it go. This is a big deal for not much, they said. They argued about this in court all year.
Yeah.
Back and forth until November 2020, Trump pardoned him and didn't matter anymore. So the case was dismissed as moot. The case wasn't resolved in his favor. They just said, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Let's just drop it. That's where it was at. Okay, cut to today. Just like all of Trump's minions, he's become a lot more cocky since Trump was on the comeback trail. So now Flynn alleges he was the victim of abusive process and malicious prosecution after he'd pled guilty.
Right.
He sued the federal government in March 2023, seeking at least $50 million. Now, this wasn't going to fly because the US government is immune from civil lawsuits, generally speaking. There is an exception, though. In this realm, there is the Federal Torts Claims Act, which does offer some exceptions to that. Very rare exceptions. What you need to show, Jared, if you want to do it, if you ever get sued.
Thank you.
Want to sue the federal government. Which you won't because you're now an Australian. You have to show there was an absence of probable cause for the original charge. At least you have to show that.
Okay.
No probable cause at all for the original charge. Need I remind you that the original charge he pled guilty for, which I would say there's a bit of probable cause when someone pleads guilty, I would say. Also, you have to show, but that's not it. That's not all. You have to show the prosecution was terminated in your favor.
Right.
After there was no probable cause. The case was never terminated. They just dropped it.
Yeah.
They didn't terminate it. So there was never a finding against the government because of the pardon. Trump ruined it.
Yeah.
So it is literally impossible for Flynn to win this case. Literally. Like, no one could ever make this case work. He doesn't have he has 0 out of 2 elements you need to make the case stick.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to win. which is why in December 2024, a judge dismissed his claim. Just said, screw you.
Yeah.
But there was to-ing and fro-ing when Trump got in, and there's more negotiations. And then Flynn filed the amended complaint in June 2025. And since then, he and Trump's DOJ have been negotiating a settlement, even though he's already lost the case. Why are they settling when he's already lost the case? He's still seeking $50 million for wrongful prosecution.
As is Trump seeking
$230 million is what Trump is seeking.
Thank you.
Because they investigated a crime that he clearly committed, the documents case.
And he suffered $230 million worth of damage.
$230 million worth of damage. That's right.
Obviously.
Now, it's looking, I don't know if Trump's going to get $230 million. I mean, he can if he wants to, but I think at this point in time, even he's not quite that shameless, but maybe in 2 years he will be that shameless. He's kind of just thinking, oh, will I go this far? But Flynn, man, he's going to get that $50 million. Everyone knows it's coming, right? Especially Flynn knows it. He's very cocky about this. He may well get that money, even though he's already lost the complaint in court. And it's impossible for him to win. He'll still get paid off because he's Trump's friend. He's getting paid off $50 million for Trump's friend. And because he told Trump that he announced publicly on Twitter that he thought the military should have kidnapped all the electoral machines in 2020 so Trump could win the election. That's the kind of thing you need to do to win $50 million from Trump. Okay, now let's put this in context before I throw this to you, Jared. The average person in 2024 who was exonerated spent 13 and a half years in prison. Prison's bad, Jared.
Yeah.
People leaving prison, they enjoy significantly less life expectancy than people who didn't go to prison. Like we're talking like 4 or 5 years less. A lot. Flynn didn't spend 1 day in prison. Not 13 and a half years. He didn't spend 1 day in prison. He barely spent any time in court. But Flynn would be getting $6.25 million per year compensation since he was indicted. The average exoneree from prison receives $50,000 per year of jail time in 2024 on the very rare occasions that they get any compensation at all. The highest, apart from Flynn, was $200,000 for a year. He's getting $6.25 million.
I really want to know, why haven't more Jan 6ers tried this approach?
It's interesting you say that, Jared. It's interesting you say that. I'll answer your question in a second. And remember, Trump wants his $100 million a year, $230 million for his pain and suffering as well.
Yeah.
Needless to say, that is all not normal. Also, remember, Trump specifically wants to confer immunity on police officers from civil and criminal liability so they can do whatever they like to people who aren't Michael Flynn. Literally, the only oversight he's conducted for legal or police abuse has been firing the FBI agents and prosecutors who worked on his cases and against the January 6 rioters. That's literally the only oversight of the entire system. And the $4.975 million his DOJ paid to the family of Ashley Babbitt, who was shot on January 6, even though, once again, she was shot after ignoring multiple warnings from police and the police were cleared of any wrongdoing, and so it would be literally impossible for her to get compensation if they didn't decide to just to hand it to her for free. I imagine there are some other victims of wrongful police shootings who wouldn't mind a piece of that, Jared. And finally, yes, Jared, the January 6 people are starting to apply for compensation as well. Correct. In fact, there was a fellow who, as off the top of my head, I didn't even have it written down. There's a fellow who is currently in trouble with the law for offering potential compensation to a child who he was sexually abusing out of the compensation he expects to get from January 6. What a charmer. So that's the situation we're in, that no one else can get any protection from the law or any justice if they're wrongfully accused or wrongfully convicted or shot. Like, no one can get any of this shit unless they are either from January 6 or Trump or one of his friends. And those people can get tens of millions of dollars. Jared. I love this segment. Got any thoughts?
I will say, bringing it back to the policy world,
Yeah.
The appointment of Mike Flynn in many ways led to Australia's adoption of the concept of free and open Indo-Pacific, or supported Australia's concept of a free and open Indo-Pacific more than anything else. Do you know why, even though he was in office for less than a month?
I do not know why.
Because of who Mike Flynn brought in with him, a guy named Matt Pottinger. Matt Pottinger.
I know nothing about this.
Matt Pottinger is the one who, in many ways, was sort of the architect of strategic competition with China, and basically adopted the free and open Indo-Pacific concept from Japan, and worked closely with the Turnbull then Morrison government to engage further in strategic competition as well, and really solidified sort of the concept of the Indo-Pacific and more security ties, unprecedented security ties across the Indo-Pacific with the United States. So Mike Flynn, short tenure, but impactful number 2.
That's really, really interesting. I'm just wondering, from what you just described there, how Matt Pottinger is enjoying unemployment during Trump's second term. Because none of that seems to be applying anymore.
Well, he did resign on January 6th.
That's the problem right there.
But he, I think, has done quite well in the private sector as one of the more well-known sort of serious policy thinkers in the Trump orbit. And he still is quite impactful, and is actually working with an Australian. You may know John Garneau.
Oh yeah.
And they provide leading insights into China.
There you go. I learned something too. We're all learning something today.
Thanks, Mike Flynn.
This is indeed a wonderful PEP festival, or a Pepstival, if you will. I'm going to leave you with one more not very normal thought. This was very much the not normal segment of the pod. If you add up all the opportunities that Trump has provided companies to donate to his government causes, I'm not talking about his election campaign here. I'm talking about his government causes. So, the East Wing redevelopment, say.
Inauguration,
the political action, the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts.
That's right. Yep.
They took donations. His presidential library. The army parades, don't forget they took donations as well. There's been a lot of these. All of these things are things that in the past presidents took zero for. They never took donations for them. The presidential library was after they resigned, after they're finished. If you add all of them up, just from this year, this year, since he's been president, government activities, right? That should be free and should not have donations. If you add them all up, apparently Trump this year has raised almost $2 billion. That's since he was president. So it's like, 10 months? Yeah. In the past, as I said, presidents raised almost nothing. This is almost entirely unregulated because this is a whole source of income that has never needed to be regulated because it didn't exist. Yeah. So he could do anything with that money. Maybe he's putting it to the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. Maybe he's not. We don't know because it's not controlled by Congress, because it's just going straight into the executive. And there's no control mechanism for that because they're not meant to raise money according to the Constitution. This is completely unconstitutional. So much room for corruption there. And this is actually more than he raised for his presidential campaign. It's actually more.
Yeah.
So we've got a whole new world of corruption here that we have zero regulation for. I'm not sure what we're going to do about it.
Do you want to know a precedence that people did not hate of this?
What's that?
Mike Bloomberg in New York City, when he had an initiative that he couldn't get city funding for, do you know what he'd do?
He just uses his own money, I guess.
And other people's as well. And so I don't think New Yorkers minded that too much, right? And so
he took donations as well, did he?
I would imagine he wasn't against taking donations, but still, just imagine if you had a less perhaps hated politician, a more controversial, a less controversial politician. People were like, oh, if you can make school lunches more affordable for New York City students, fine. But what if that billionaire in New York City, that mayor, decides to instead just do ICE? And just have a ramped up immigration and cut down. It's one of those things that gets to that controversial question. Do we want a dictator or do we want someone effective? And what does effectiveness look like? How much do we want the democratic system to slow people down? Gets into abundance with Ezra Klein. We're really in this era of we want government doing more, doing it better, but we just can't define where.
I'm really glad that you brought it up. I'd never heard that before, that this had some precedent, and that's really interesting. It might be a thing where you go, well, things start innocently and they become a little less innocent, and that's when you need the regulations to kick in. It might be a thing of it just simply needs some legislation. That's all. And then it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Or this might just be awful. I guess we'll find out. Either way, you've elucidated and you've added some light to the path, and you've also been very reasonable.
What a lame nickname.
Reasonable Jared. That was Reasonable Jared. I hope you enjoyed it, Jared. Say bye-bye to the Peppers.
Thanks so much, Peppers, and thanks for being so kind when I meet you in person. Much nicer than the other crowds.
Happy PEPmas. Happy Pepsgiving. See you next year, Jared.
Thank you so much.
Stay peppy. Well, that was the end of part 1 of the Pepsgiving /PEPmas /Peppy New Year special. Isn't that Jared Fellow reasonable?
Oh my goodness. His new nickname is officially Reasonable Jared.
We shouldn't do that to him. Lockie, you're just getting funnier and funnier with your glasses and tattoo combination.
I can't believe I wore them during the entire recording as well.
We're going to be seeing you all again, folks, in 2 days' time for part 2 of the big special, when we actually will be hearing a little bit more from Lockie than 2 lines and a visual joke. And I cannot wait to see what ridiculous costume you have in store for us when we record that in a couple of days' time.
I do have to get rid of this tattoo because I've got a rental inspection in the morning.
Fair enough.
So I will have a different costume,
Oh,
but
so
that doesn't
exciting.
matter because it's a visual gag.
It is. Until then, folks, stay peppy.